At 1:17 a.m., Lily Bennett's finger hovered over the Submit button. One click would expose a multi-million-dollar fraud. One click would also destroy her career, her security, everything she'd clawed her way toward in 30 years of surviving. The man she'd been feeding leftovers to for weeks, the janitor who listened like he actually cared, had no idea what she was about to lose. Neither did the executives upstairs who'd already written her obituary. But in 17 minutes, the entire building would know her name. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Section D hummed with a frequency that made your back teeth ache. Lily had worked in compliance for 4 years, and nobody had ever fixed them. Nobody had ever fixed much of anything down here, actually. The carpet still had the stain from when Marcus dropped his coffee in 2019. The blinds on the third window from the left had been stuck at that crooked angle since before she started, and the lock on the supply closet still didn't catch unless you jiggled the handle just right while pushing with your hip. She'd learned all these small failures by heart. Tuesday nights were when Lily stayed late. Not because anyone asked her to, not because she was chasing a promotion. There weren't promotions for people like her, people who didn't go to the right schools or know the right names. She stayed because the office was quiet after 7, and quiet meant she could actually think. Quiet meant the phone didn't ring with people asking her to verify things they should have verified themselves. Quiet meant Stephen from acquisitions wouldn't lean over her cubicle wall with his coffee breath and his opinions about her lunch choices. Tonight, she'd brought the same thing she always brought: peanut butter sandwich, apple, crackers she'd taken from the Hotel Continental breakfast 3 weeks ago when her building's water had been shut off and the company put them up overnight. She ate at her desk because the break room felt too big when it was empty, and because she'd timed it perfectly. If she ate between 7:15 and 7:30, she'd finish right when the janitor came through. His name was Ray. At least that's what his shirt said. He'd been cleaning Section D for about 2 months now, always between 7:30 and 8, always with the same steady rhythm. Push the mop, dip, ring, push again. He never had headphones in like the younger guys. Never rushed. There was something almost meditative about the way he worked, like he wasn't trying to finish fast, he was trying to finish right. Lily had started noticing him the 3rd week, not because of anything he did, because of what he didn't do. He didn't stare, didn't make small talk that was really just an excuse to stand too close, didn't treat her like she was furniture just because she worked in the basement. When he'd accidentally knocked over her water bottle one night, he'd apologized, actually apologized like it mattered, and brought paper towels from his cart without making it into a production. That's when she'd started leaving him food. Nothing dramatic, half a sandwich one night when she'd made too much, an orange the next week. She'd leave it on the edge of the desk near the trash can he always emptied last, wrapped in a napkin so it didn't look like garbage. He never said anything, but it was always gone by morning. Last Tuesday, he'd finally broken the silence. "You don't have to do that," he'd said quietly, pausing mid-mop stroke. Lily had glanced up from her monitor. His face was weathered in that way that made it hard to guess age. Could have been 40, could have been 55. Dark eyes, careful posture, the kind of tired that went deeper than one long shift. "Do what?" she'd asked, even though she knew. "Feed the help." The way he said it wasn't bitter, just factual. "I'm not feeding the help," Lily had replied, turning back to her screen. "I'm feeding Ray. There's a difference." He'd studied her for a moment, then nodded once and gone back to mopping. But something had shifted. The next night, he'd asked if she'd had dinner yet. The night after that, he'd mentioned the lights. "Those things give you headaches?" he'd asked, gesturing up at the panels. "Every single day." "Yeah, they would." He'd frowned slightly, like he was filing that information away somewhere it might actually matter. Tonight, Lily wasn't thinking about Ray. She was thinking about the email she'd drafted 11 days ago and hadn't sent. It sat in her drafts folder, subject line blank, addressed to the ethics hotline that everyone knew was monitored by the same executives it was supposed to investigate. She pulled it up now, reading through it for probably the 100th time. The scholarship fund had been her assignment. A routine audit. Verify the disbursements, confirm the recipients matched the criteria, sign off, move on. Nobody expected her to dig deeper. But Lily had this problem where she actually read things. And when the numbers didn't line up quite right, she'd pulled the appendices. That's where she'd found it. Someone had rewritten the eligibility requirements 6 months ago, quietly, cleanly. Changed students from low-income backgrounds to students demonstrating academic excellence and leadership potential. Which sounded nice until you realized what it actually meant. No more kids from neighborhoods like the one Lily grew up in. No more first-generation college students scraping together tuition. Just resume builders for kids who already had everything. The money was still called the Access and Opportunity Scholarship Fund. The branding hadn't changed. The press releases still talked about commitment to diversity. But the money? The money now went to private school students with perfect SAT scores and parents who summered in the Hamptons. Lily had traced the authorization, 3 signatures, all from the executive floor, and the timestamp showed it had been changed the same week the company announced record profits and executive bonuses. They'd stolen from kids who needed it and given it to kids who'd never know what needing it felt like. She'd spent 11 days trying to talk herself out of caring. Because caring was expensive when you made $43,000 a year and your apartment's rent went up every 12 months like clockwork. Caring was dangerous when you had no safety net, no family money, no partner's income to fall back on. Caring was a luxury for people who could afford to be unemployed. Lily had been unemployed before, after college, after her mom got sick, after the bills piled up and the collection calls started. She'd been unemployed and scared and willing to take anything, retail, temp work, overnight shifts at the warehouse where you stood on concrete for 10 hours and your feet went numb. She'd clawed her way to this job, this basement office, this steady paycheck, and she knew exactly how fast it could all disappear. So she'd written the email, documented everything, attached the evidence, and then she'd saved it to drafts and gone home and tried to sleep. But here's the thing about truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It sits there, patient, waiting. Lily's finger moved to the touchpad, cursor hovering over the send button. 1 click. That's all it would take. The door to Section D opened and Ray came in pushing his cart, right on schedule. Lily quickly minimized the email and pulled up a spreadsheet, something boring and harmless. "Evening," Ray said quietly. "Hey." He started his usual route, working from the far corner toward her desk. Lily tried to focus on the numbers in front of her, but the email was still there, minimized but not gone, like a weight pressing against the inside of her chest. "You staying late again?" Ray asked after a few minutes. "Yeah, trying to catch up on some stuff." He nodded, emptying the trash can near the printer. "You do that a lot, stay late." "Comes with the territory." "Does it?" He glanced at her, something knowing in his expression. "Or do you just not want to go home?" Lily looked up sharply. That was more direct than he'd ever been. Ray held up a hand. "Sorry, not my business." "No, it's..." She sighed. "You're not wrong. My apartment's not exactly a sanctuary." "Loud neighbors?" "Broken heater. Landlord says he'll fix it, but he's been saying that since November." She shrugged. "It's warmer here." Ray was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I get that." Something about the way he said it made Lily wonder what he was going home to, or not going home to. "You got kids?" The question was out before she could stop it. Ray's expression shifted, not closed off exactly, but careful. "A daughter, 5 years old." "That's a good age." "Yeah." His voice softened. "She is." "She know you work nights?" "She knows I work a lot." Ray moved to the next trash can. "Her mom, we're not together, so I got her every other week." "Those weeks, I do day shifts. These weeks," he gestured around the empty office, "I'm here." Lily felt something crack open in her chest. This man, who she'd assumed had nothing, who cleaned floors for minimum wage, who she'd been leaving scraps of food for like he was a stray, had a 5-year-old daughter he was trying to see, had a life that required juggling schedules and sacrifices she'd never even asked about. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." "Why would you?" Ray's tone wasn't unkind. "We don't exactly have heart-to-hearts." "Maybe we should." He looked at her then, really looked, and Lily saw something flicker across his face, recognition, maybe, or loneliness recognizing itself. "You want to know the worst part?" Lily said suddenly, surprising herself. "It's not the broken heater or the long hours or any of it. It's knowing that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly how it's supposed to. For them. Ray stopped mopping. Who's them? People upstairs. People who make decisions about other people's lives and never have to face those people. Never have to see what their choices actually cost. She was talking too much, she knew it, but she couldn't stop. They take things that were meant to help, scholarships, programs, safety nets, and they twist them into something that only helps people who don't need help. And they do it so cleanly that nobody even notices until it's done. You noticed? Lily met his eyes. Yeah, I did. So what are you going to do about it? The question hung there, simple and impossible. What can I do? Lily's laugh was hollow. I'm nobody. I work in a basement. I don't have power or connections or… You have the truth, Ray interrupted quietly. That's not nothing. The truth gets people like me fired. Maybe. He leaned on his mop handle, studying her. But staying quiet gets you something worse. What's worse than losing your job? Losing yourself. The words hit harder than they should have. Lily looked away, blinking against the sudden sting behind her eyes. I can't afford to be brave, she whispered. Ray was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't think bravery is about affording it. I think it's about deciding what you can't afford to live without. He went back to mopping then, giving her space, but his words stayed, settling into the gaps between her thoughts. What couldn't she afford to live without? Not the apartment, as shitty as it was. Not the job, as much as she needed it. Those were just things. Circumstances. They could change, had changed before, would change again. But this feeling of knowing something was wrong and doing nothing, that would stick, that would calcify into something permanent, something that changed the shape of who she was. Lily pulled the email back up. Her hand was shaking as she moved the cursor to send. One click. She thought about those kids, the ones who'd never get the scholarships now. Kids like she'd been, scraping together financial aid applications and hoping someone would take a chance. Kids who'd been promised access and opportunity and got handed another locked door instead. She thought about Ray, working night shifts so he could see his daughter every other week. About all the other Rays in the building, invisible people keeping everything running while executives upstairs got bonuses for cutting costs. She thought about the version of herself who would walk out of here tonight having done nothing, who would go home to her cold apartment and lie awake knowing she'd chosen safety over truth, who would become exactly the kind of person who made this system possible. At 1:17 a.m., Lily clicked send. The whoosh of the email leaving her outbox sounded impossibly loud in the quiet office. For a moment, nothing happened. The world didn't end. The lights didn't flicker. Ray kept mopping in the corner, unaware that everything had just changed. Then Lily's hand started shaking for real. Oh God, she breathed. Oh God, what did I just do? Ray glanced over. You okay? Lily couldn't finish the sentence. She'd just destroyed her career, her livelihood, any chance of moving up or out or anywhere but down. In one click, she'd thrown away 4 years of careful invisibility. Her phone buzzed. Email notification, ethics hotline. Your submission has been received and assigned, case number 2847. A review team will contact you within 48 hours. 48 hours. 2 days for them to figure out who she was, what she'd found, how to bury it. Lily stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. She needed air, needed to move, needed to… Hey, Ray's voice cut through the spiral. Breathe. I can't, Yes, you can. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. He'd set the mop aside, was walking toward her with his hands visible, non-threatening. Come on, with me, in. Lily sucked in a breath, jagged and insufficient. Slower, Ray coached. You're not drowning, you're just scared. There's a difference. She tried again. In for 4. Hold. Out for 4. There you go. He nodded. Again. By the third breath, the panic had downshifted from alarm bells to just noise. Loud, insistent noise, but survivable. I'm such an idiot, Lily said, pressing her palms against her eyes. Why? Because you told the truth? Because I thought telling the truth would matter. She laughed bitterly. They're going to bury this. Bury me. I I don't know what I was thinking. Ray was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Can I tell you something?" Lily lowered her hands. "Sure." My daughter's name is Emma, and every night before bed, she asks me the same question. "Did you do something good today, Daddy?" His voice caught slightly. Some nights I can tell her yes. Most nights I just tell her I tried. But lately I've been wondering what kind of answer she deserves, what kind of world she's growing up in. Ray, what you just did. He met her eyes. That's the answer I want to give her. That when it mattered, someone tried, even if they were scared. Even if it cost them. Lily felt tears spill over. It's going to cost me everything. Maybe, Ray acknowledged. Or maybe you just bought yourself something you didn't know you'd lost. Before Lily could ask what he meant, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside Section D. Multiple sets. Moving fast. They both froze. That's the executive elevator, Lily whispered. Nobody uses that this late, except the door burst open. 3 people Lily recognized from the upper floors, led by Vanessa Hale, Senior VP of Strategic Initiatives, or whatever made-up title they'd given her. Tall, sharp-suited, the kind of woman who wore ambition like perfume. Lily Bennett? Vanessa's smile was all edges. Yes? We need you to come with us. Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. Why? Your email to the ethics hotline raised some concerns. We'd like to address them immediately. Vanessa's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Ray stepped forward slightly, putting himself between Lily and the door. A subtle shift, barely noticeable, but Vanessa's eyes flickered to him with brief irritation. The janitor can finish his work elsewhere, she said dismissively. It's fine, Lily said quietly to Ray, even though everything in her was screaming that it wasn't fine, nothing was fine. I'll be okay. Ray looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he nodded once and stepped aside. As Lily followed Vanessa and her escorts toward the elevator, she glanced back once. Ray was still standing there, watching. And for just a second, she could have sworn she saw something flicker across his face. Not concern exactly. More like calculation. Then the elevator doors closed and he was gone. Jet. The conference room on the 18th floor was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20 but currently held only 5. Lighting that was somehow both too bright and too cold. Lily sat in the chair they'd indicated, middle of the table, facing the windows so the light would be in her eyes. Classic power play. Vanessa took the head of the table. The 2 men flanking her were from legal, Lily was pretty sure, though nobody had bothered with introductions. So, Vanessa folded her hands on the table. You sent an email tonight making some very serious allegations. I sent documentation, Lily corrected carefully, of changes made to the scholarship fund eligibility requirements. Changes that were properly authorized and well within standard operational procedures. Changes that redirected money meant for low-income students. Vanessa's smile thinned. The fund's mission is to support academic excellence. The board felt the criteria needed updating to reflect that mission more accurately. The board felt that, or you did? One of the legal men leaned forward. Miss Bennett, I'd be very careful about accusations. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, Lily interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm stating facts. The authorization was signed on March 15th, the same day executive bonuses were announced. The same week, 3 members of the board sent their children's private school tuition receipts through expense reimbursement, which, by the way, violates the company's conflict of interest policy. The room went very quiet. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recalculation. You've been very thorough, she said softly. That's admirable, truly. But I think perhaps you've misunderstood some of the documentation you found. These matters are complex, and without proper context, I have the context, Lily said. I have the original fund charter. I have the board meeting minutes. I have the email chain where you discuss changing the requirements specifically to reduce exposure to applicants who don't fit the company's aspirational brand image. That's a direct quote. Vanessa's fingers twitched. Those communications were confidential. They were also evidence. Of what exactly? This from the legal man on the right, his tone sharp. Of a company exercising its right to steward its charitable programs as it sees fit? That's not fraud, Miss Bennett. That's governance. It's fraud when you're still claiming tax deductions based on the original mission statement, Lily shot back. When you're still using the old criteria in public filings to the IRS while operating under new criteria that exclude the exact population you're claiming to serve. The silence that followed was different, heavier. Vanessa sat back in her chair, studying Lily with new intensity. How long have you been planning this? I haven't been planning anything. I found discrepancies in an audit and followed procedure. Procedure would have been coming to your supervisor, to HR, not going directly to ethics with unverified allegations. Everything I submitted was verified, down to the timestamp. By you. Vanessa's voice hardened. A junior compliance analyst with no oversight experience, no advanced training, and frankly, no business-making institutional policy decisions. There it was, the real attack. I wasn't making policy decisions, Lily said quietly. I was identifying violations of existing policy. What you were doing, Vanessa interrupted, was overstepping, dramatically, and I think we all know why. Lily's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Vanessa pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, and slid it across the table. This is your personnel file. 3 years ago, you applied for one of these scholarships yourself. You were rejected. That was before I worked here. And yet here you are, in a position to access confidential fund information, making allegations that just happen to align with your personal grievances. Vanessa's smile was poison. It's a compelling narrative, I'll give you that. Wronged applicant seeks revenge by sabotaging the program that rejected her. That's not what this is, isn't it? Vanessa leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like a vendetta dressed up as whistleblowing. And when ethics investigates, and they will investigate thoroughly, what do you think they'll find? A legitimate concern? Or a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind and a history of manufacturing documentation to support her bias? The words hit like ice water. Manufacturing documentation. They were going to claim she'd faked the evidence. I didn't manufacture anything, Lily said, but her voice shook. Everything I submitted is real, verifiable. You can check the source files. Source files can be altered, the second legal man said. Timestamps can be changed. Metadata can be manipulated, especially by someone with your level of system access. I didn't. Of course you'll say that. Vanessa's tone was almost sympathetic now, which was worse. But the question isn't what you'll say, Lily. It's what the evidence will show. And right now, the evidence shows a pattern of concerning behavior. The late nights alone in the office, the unusual data access requests logged to your terminal, the personal connection to the fund that creates obvious bias. Lily's mind raced. Everything Vanessa was saying was technically true, but completely wrong. Yes, she stayed late, because the office was warmer than her apartment. Yes, she'd accessed fund data, because that was literally her job. Yes, she'd applied for the scholarship years ago, but that had nothing to do with finding the fraud. Except now it did, because they were making it the story. I want a lawyer, Lily said. Of course, Vanessa replied smoothly. That's your right. Though I should mention that legal has already been advised of the situation, and their preliminary recommendation is immediate termination for cause, which would void your severance package and any potential references. You can't fire me for reporting fraud. We're not firing you for reporting fraud. We're firing you for fabricating evidence to support false allegations motivated by personal bias. See the difference? Lily did see the difference, and she saw how neatly they'd boxed her in. If she fought, she'd lose her job and her credibility. If she backed down, she'd keep her job, but they'd bury the truth. Either way, they won. However, Vanessa continued, her voice shifting to something almost conciliatory, we're not unreasonable people. You've been with the company 4 years. You've done adequate work. It would be a shame to end things on such a sour note over what amounts to a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Lily repeated flatly. Exactly. You found some confusing documentation, made an honest mistake in interpretation, and let personal feelings cloud your judgment. It happens. We're prepared to accept your resignation effective immediately, provide you with 3 months severance, and agree to neutral references for future employment. All you have to do is sign a statement acknowledging that your allegations were unfounded and based on incomplete information. There it was. The deal. The exit ramp. 3 months severance would cover rent while she looked for something else. Neutral references meant she wouldn't be blacklisted. She could walk out of here tonight with her dignity barely intact and start over somewhere else. All she had to do was lie. Say the truth she'd found wasn't true. Say the evidence she'd documented didn't exist. Become complicit in exactly the kind of corruption she'd tried to expose. Lily looked down at her hands. They'd stopped shaking. That seemed significant somehow. "No," she said quietly. Vanessa blinked. "I'm sorry?" "No, I'm not resigning. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not recanting." Lily lifted her eyes to meet Vanessa's. "Everything I submitted was real. You know it, I know it, and ethics will know it once they investigate properly. Miss Bennett, you can fire me if you want, sue me if you think you can make it stick, but I'm not going to stand here and pretend I made this up just because it's inconvenient for you." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Vanessa's expression went flat. Professional mask fully in place. "Then I'm afraid we're done here. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. You're terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct and insubordination." "Insubordination," Lily repeated. "That's what you're calling this." "That's what it is." Vanessa stood, smoothing her suit. "You refused a direct order to recant false allegations. That's insubordination by definition. You can't give me a direct order to lie. I gave you an order to sign a factual statement about your misinterpretation of company documents. Your refusal to comply demonstrates willful disobedience." Vanessa moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Lily, I almost believed you were doing this out of principle, but principle doesn't pay rent. You'll figure that out soon enough." The door opened. 2 security guards stepped in, and Lily, standing alone in that too bright conference room with all her bridges burning around her, felt something strange settle into her chest. Not relief, not vindication, something quieter and more permanent. She told the truth. They'd destroyed her for it. And somehow, standing here in the wreckage of her career, she felt more like herself than she had in 4 years. "Come on, ma'am," one of the security guards said gently. "Let's get your things." Lily nodded and followed them out. She didn't look back. Section D looked different at 2:47 a.m. The fluorescent lights still hummed, but the sound felt distant now, irrelevant. Lily packed her desk methodically, coffee mug with the chip in the handle, 3 pens that still worked, the photo of her mom from before she got sick. It all fit in one small box. Ray was still there, mopping the same section of floor he'd been working when they'd taken her upstairs. The security guards waited by the door, giving her space but making their presence clear. "Heard you're leaving," Ray said quietly as she taped the box shut. "Yeah, they made that pretty clear." "I'm sorry," Lily shrugged. "I knew what I was doing." "Did you?" She looked at him then, this man she barely knew, who'd somehow become the only person who seemed to see her. "No, but I did it anyway." Ray set his mop aside and walked over to her desk. For a moment he just stood there, looking at her with that same careful expression he'd worn all night. Then he pulled a business card from his pocket and set it on the desk. Lily picked it up, frowning. It was heavy stock, embossed letters. Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer. Her brain refused to process what she was seeing. "What is this?" "A reminder," Ray said softly, "that you're not as alone as they want you to think." Lily stared at the card, at the name that didn't match the man in front of her, at the title that made no sense for someone pushing a mop at 2:47 in the morning. "I don't understand." "You will," he said. "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. boardroom. Be there." The security guard shifted by the door. "Time to go." Lily picked up her box, the business card clutched in her other hand, and walked toward the elevator. Her mind was spinning, trying to connect dots that shouldn't connect, trying to make sense of something that defied sense. At the elevator, she turned back one more time. Ray, or Ethan, or whoever he actually was, stood in the middle of Section D, watching her leave. And for the first time all night, he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The elevator doors closed, and Lily, holding a box of office supplies and a business card that changed everything, realized she had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in 4 years, she couldn't wait to find out. Lily didn't sleep. She sat on her apartment floor with the business card propped against an empty coffee mug, staring at it like it might suddenly make sense. The heater still didn't work. Her breath came out in little clouds. She'd wrapped herself in 2 blankets and her winter coat, but the cold had nothing to do with temperature. Ethan Cole. She'd Googled the name around 3 a.m. when the shock wore off enough for her hands to work properly. Photos loaded slowly on her cracked phone screen. Press releases. Forbes articles. A man in tailored suits shaking hands with politicians and tech moguls. The same man who'd been pushing a mop through Section D for 2 months. The same man she'd been feeding leftover sandwiches. The CEO of the entire company had been mopping floors, and she'd treated him like... Lily's laugh came out sharp and slightly unhinged. She'd patronized a billionaire, fed him like a stray, told him about her broken heater and her struggles like he wouldn't understand, like he existed in the same world she did. Except he'd let her. He'd listened. He'd asked about her dinner and noticed the fluorescent lights and talked about his daughter like his daughter. Lily pulled up the photos again, scrolling past the corporate headshots until she found one from some charity gala. Ethan Cole in a tuxedo, half smiling at the camera, and next to him a little girl in a pink dress. Emma, 5 years old, he'd said. The photo caption confirmed it. The ex-wife wasn't in the picture, literally and apparently figuratively, so that part had been true at least. The custody arrangement, the night shifts timed around visitation. Unless that had been part of whatever game he was playing. Lily's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Car will pick you up at 9:30. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. E. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. 1,000 questions fought for priority. Why had he been pretending? What did he want from her? What the hell was happening at 10 a.m.? She typed, "Why didn't you tell me?" The response came almost immediately. "Would you have believed me?" Lily stared at that for a long minute. Then she typed, "No. Exactly. See you at 10. She set the phone down and pulled the blankets tighter. Outside, the city was starting to wake up. Delivery trucks rumbling past. Someone's alarm going off through the thin walls. Wednesday morning, rolling in like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She'd been fired. The truth she'd exposed was probably already being buried. And the janitor who told her bravery wasn't about affording it turned out to be the man who owned the building. Lily closed her eyes and tried to remember exactly what she'd said to him over the past 2 months. Every complaint about management, every cynical observation about corporate culture, every bitter comment about people upstairs who made decisions without consequences. She'd said all of that to the person at the very top. "Oh God," she muttered into the blankets. "I'm such an idiot." But then she remembered the way he'd looked at her last night when she'd sent that email. Not like a CEO catching an employee in an act of insubordination. Like someone who'd been waiting for her to do exactly that. The business card caught the early morning light, embossed letters throwing tiny shadows. Lily picked it up one more time, running her thumb over the raised print. Then she stood up, blankets falling away, and walked to her closet. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. She owned exactly 3 professional outfits. One was her interview suit from 4 years ago, slightly too tight now. One was the gray dress she wore to her mother's funeral. The third was black pants and a white blouse she'd bought on clearance and wore to every company event she couldn't avoid. None of them felt like herself. Lily pushed past the professional clothes to the back of the closet, where she kept things she actually liked but never wore. A green sweater her mom had given her the last Christmas before the hospital. Jeans that fit properly. Boots that were worn but real leather, the kind that would last. She pulled them out and got dressed. If this was the last time she'd ever set foot in that building, she'd do it as herself. Not as the version of Lily who'd spent 4 years making herself smaller. The car arrived at 9:30 exactly. Black sedan, driver in a suit who opened the door without comment. Lily slid into the back seat and tried not to think about how much this probably cost per hour. They didn't go to the main entrance. The driver took a route around back, pulling into an underground garage Lily didn't know existed. Private elevator, keycard access. The door opened directly into a hallway she'd never seen, all glass and steel and the kind of quiet that meant expensive soundproofing. A woman in her 50s waited by the elevator, tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral. "Miss Bennett, I'm Carol, Mr. Cole's executive assistant. He's finishing a call, but he'll be ready for you in a few minutes. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," Lily said, even though she wasn't remotely fine. Carol nodded and gestured down the hallway. "Conference room 3. Make yourself comfortable." The conference room was smaller than the one where Vanessa had fired her, but somehow more intimidating. Windows overlooking the city from what had to be the 25th floor at least. A table for 8, and sitting at the far end going through a stack of papers with reading glasses perched on his nose was Ray. Except it wasn't Ray. Same face, same dark eyes, but everything else was different. The janitor's uniform was gone, replaced by charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No mop, no cart. Just a man who clearly belonged in this room, in this building, in this world that Lily had never been invited into. He looked up when she entered and removed the glasses. "Lily, thanks for coming. Did I have a choice?" The words came out sharper than she intended. Ethan's expression didn't change. "Yes, you always had a choice. Even when your security guards were escorting me out? Especially then." He set the papers aside and stood. "Sit, please." Lily remained standing. "I'd rather know what this is first." "This is me keeping a promise I made to myself 6 months ago." Ethan walked around the table, closing the distance between them, but stopping a respectful few feet away. "That if I found one person in this company who gave a damn about something other than their paycheck or their title, I'd back them, completely. So this was a test. No, it was research." He leaned against the table, arms crossed. "Do you know how many executives I have?" 17. "Do you know how many of them would have reported what you found?" 0. Not because they're all corrupt, because they've all learned that comfort is safer than conscience. Lily's hands clenched. "You knew about the scholarship fund. You knew what Vanessa did." "I suspected. I didn't have proof." "You own the company. You could have gotten proof whenever you wanted." "Could I?" Ethan's voice was quiet. "You think if I'd walked into Vanessa's office and demanded to see the fund records, she would have handed over the real ones? Or do you think she would have shown me exactly what I was supposed to see, smiled, and made sure the evidence disappeared before I could look twice?" Lily wanted to argue, but she'd worked in compliance long enough to know he was right. The moment Power started asking questions, the answers got sanitized. "So instead you mopped floors and spied on your own employees. And instead I did the same job my father did when he started this company 40 years ago, before the IPO and the board meetings and the stockholders, back when he knew every person's name." Ethan's expression tightened. "He used to tell me that you can't lead people you don't understand, and you can't understand people if they're performing for you. So you performed for us instead. I worked the same shifts as the night crew, listened to what they said when they thought nobody important was around, learned which managers treated them like humans and which ones treated them like furniture." He paused. "I learned that the woman in compliance worked late every Tuesday because her apartment was too cold, that she shared her food even though she didn't have enough, that she noticed things other people missed because she actually read what she was signing." Lily's throat tightened. "You used me. I paid attention to you. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, you let me think you were someone you weren't, so you could, what, see if I'd be useful?" Ethan met her eyes. "I let you think I was someone who needed help so I could see if you'd give it anyway. Most people wouldn't. They'd walk past the janitor, ignore the night crew, pretend the invisible people don't exist. You didn't. So I passed your test. Congratulations. What do you want? A medal?" "I want you to understand something." Ethan pushed off the table, his voice sharpening. "Last night, Vanessa Hale tried to destroy you. She had legal draft termination papers before you even reached the 18th floor. She had a plan to discredit you, bury your evidence, and make sure you'd never work in this industry again. And she almost succeeded." "Almost?" "She didn't know I was watching. Didn't know I'd installed monitoring software on senior executive accounts 3 months ago after the third suspicious policy change in a row. Every email she sent, every document she altered, every conversation she had about burying your report, I have all of it. The room tilted slightly. Lily grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. You recorded her committing crimes. I documented an executive abusing her authority and violating company policy. What she did crossed about 15 legal lines, but I'll let the lawyers figure out which ones stick. Ethan walked to a laptop at the head of the table and opened it. She sent this at 3:47 this morning. He turned the screen toward Lily. Email chain. Vanessa to someone in HR, someone in legal, someone whose title Lily didn't recognize. Subject: Bennett. Situation: Containment protocol. The compliance analyst has been terminated and signed out. Evidence has been secured and will be reclassified as personnel grievance rather than ethics violation. Recommend immediate implementation of revised narrative. Disgruntled employee with personal bias attempted to fabricate misconduct allegations. Ethics case should be closed by Friday with finding of no wrongdoing. Fund restructuring will proceed as planned. No changes to timeline or implementation. Lily read it twice, then a third time. She's just going to pretend it never happened. She was, Ethan corrected. Until about 6 hours ago when I forwarded this entire chain to the board along with the actual evidence you submitted, the original fund charter, and a full audit of every policy change Vanessa authorized in the past 18 months. What did the board say? They called an emergency meeting for 10 a.m. today. Ethan checked his watch. Which starts in 12 minutes. Lily's stomach dropped. You want me there? I want you to finish what you started. He closed the laptop. You exposed the fraud, but Vanessa's trying to twist it into something else, and the board. They're smart, they're cautious, and they're very concerned about liability. If they think this is just he said, she said, they'll choose the path of least resistance, which means Vanessa keeps her job, the fund stays changed, and your evidence gets buried in a file marked employee grievance. So what do you expect me to do? Tell them what you found, how you found it, why it matters. Ethan's voice softened. Be the same person who sent that email at 1:17 in the morning, knowing it would cost her everything. Lily wanted to say yes, wanted to walk into that boardroom and make them listen, but her hands were shaking again and her mouth had gone dry. They'll destroy me, she whispered. Vanessa's already built the narrative. I'm the disgruntled employee with a grudge. I'm the unreliable narrator. The second I open my mouth, they'll tear me apart. They'll try, Ethan agreed. That's why I'll be there. You're the CEO. You should just fire her. I could, but then the board would ask why I didn't catch this sooner, why I let it happen under my watch. And Vanessa would claim she was following my implicit direction, that the culture I created made her think this was acceptable. He shook his head. If I just fire her, it becomes about my judgment. But if you testify to what you found, and I support you with evidence, it becomes about her actions, about accountability. You want me to be the face of this so you don't have to be. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want you to have the chance to speak truth to power without being silenced. That's not the same thing. Lily looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd spent 2 months pretending to be someone else, who'd listened to her complaints and her fears, and never once revealed that he could actually do something about them, who was now asking her to walk back into the fire she'd barely escaped. Why me? She asked. You could have picked anyone, could have planted evidence differently. Why did it have to be me? Ethan was silent for long enough that Lily thought he might not answer. Then he said, Because 6 months ago, my daughter asked me that question. Did you do something good today, Daddy? And I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd said yes and meant it. I'd built this company into something my father wouldn't recognize, hired people who valued growth over integrity, created systems that protected profit instead of people, and I didn't know how to fix it without burning the whole thing down. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. Then I read your first audit report, 3 years ago. You'd flagged a vendor contract that looked fine on paper but had some unusual payment structures. Your supervisor told you to sign off on it anyway. You refused, wrote a formal objection, got overruled. The contract went through. Lily remembered. She'd almost quit over that one. 2 years later, Ethan continued, that vendor got indicted for tax fraud. The payment structures you'd flagged were the mechanism. If someone had listened to you, the company would have avoided a $15 million liability. He turned back to her. But nobody listened because you were junior, inexperienced, didn't know your place. How do you know about that? Because I read every audit report filed in the last 5 years, looking for patterns, looking for people who cared about getting it right instead of getting ahead. He walked back toward her. You were the only one who kept filing objections even after they stopped listening, the only one who didn't learn to look the other way. Lily's chest felt tight. That's just doing my job. No. Doing your job is signing what they tell you to sign and collecting your paycheck. What you did was giving a damn. Ethan stopped in front of her. So yes, I want you to be the face of this, not because I'm hiding, because you earned it. Because those kids who lost their scholarships deserve someone who'll fight for them even when it's hard, even when it costs everything. I'm already fired. I already lost everything. Did you? Ethan asked quietly. Or did you finally figure out what you were worth? Before Lily could answer, Carol appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cole, the board is assembled. Ethan nodded. Then he looked at Lily. Your choice. You can walk out right now. I'll have Carol cut you a check for the severance Vanessa should have offered. 6 months' salary. Glowing reference. Clean break. Or you can come with me and finish this. Lily's mind raced. 6 months' salary would mean security. Time to find something else. A chance to start over somewhere they didn't know her as the troublemaker who got fired. But it would also mean Vanessa won. The scholarship fund stayed changed. The next person who found fraud would look at what happened to Lily and decide silence was safer. She thought about those kids, the ones who'd applied believing the promises on the website, who'd gotten rejection letters and never knew the game had been rigged before they even started. She thought about Ray, Ethan, whoever he really was, asking if she'd had dinner yet, noticing the lights that gave her headaches, talking about his daughter like she was the reason he showed up every day. She thought about her mother who'd worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford the prescriptions, who'd told Lily to be smart, be careful, be safe, but who'd also said, the week before she died, don't let them make you small, baby. You're worth more than they'll ever pay you. Lily took a breath. If I do this, I want something. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Name it. The scholarship fund. I want it restored, all of it. Original criteria, original mission. And I want oversight. Real oversight, not just signatures on paper. Done. And I want an apology, public, on record, for every kid who applied this year and got rejected under the fake criteria. Also done. And I want... Lily hesitated. I want a job. Ethan tilted his head. You already had a job. Not in compliance, not in the basement. I want to work in ethics. Real ethics, not the hotline that reports to legal. I want to build something that actually protects people instead of covering for executives. For the first time since she'd walked into the room, Ethan smiled. Actually smiled, not the careful corporate expression, but something genuine. You're negotiating. You told me to know my worth. This is what I'm worth. Fair enough. He held out his hand. You testify. I'll back everything you say. We fire Vanessa, fix the fund, and build whatever ethics infrastructure you think this company needs. Deal? Lily looked at his outstretched hand. This man who'd lied about who he was but told her the truth about everything else. Who'd mopped floors to understand the people who worked for him. Who'd watched his own executives commit fraud and waited for someone brave enough to expose it. She shook his hand. Deal. The boardroom was worse than Lily had imagined. 12 people seated around a table that probably cost more than her annual salary. Most of them were older, white, men in suits that fit too well. A few women, equally polished. All of them looked at Lily like she was a stain someone had forgotten to clean. Vanessa sat near the middle, composed and confident. She'd changed clothes since last night. Fresh suit, perfect makeup, not a hair out of place. When she saw Lily, something flickered across her face. Surprise, quickly masked. What is she doing here? Vanessa's voice was calm but sharp. Mr. Cole, this woman was terminated for cause. She has no business in a board meeting. Ethan pulled out a chair for Lily at the opposite end of the table from Vanessa. Miss Bennett is here at my invitation, As the person who originally identified the misconduct we're here to discuss, her testimony is relevant. Alleged misconduct, Vanessa corrected smoothly, based on falsified evidence created by an employee with documented bias and a personal vendetta. We'll get to the evidence, Ethan said, taking his own seat. But first, I'd like Miss Bennett to explain exactly what she found and how she found it, without interruption. He looked at Lily, nodded once. The room waited. Lily's mouth was desert dry. Her hands were shaking under the table where nobody could see. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to leave, to make herself small again. Instead, she opened her mouth and started talking. 3 weeks ago, I was assigned a routine audit of the Access and Opportunity Scholarship Fund. The assignment came through normal channels, quarterly review, standard procedure. I was supposed to verify that disbursements matched approved recipients and that fund administration costs were within acceptable ranges. Her voice steadied as she fell into the familiar rhythm of reporting. The numbers matched. On paper, everything looked correct, but there was a notation in the appendix about updated eligibility criteria. It referenced a board meeting from March 15th. That struck me as odd because eligibility criteria changes require formal documentation and usually go through a longer approval process. One of the board members, older man, gray suit, leaned forward. And you decided to investigate this notation without supervisory approval? I decided to read the documentation referenced in the materials I was assigned to audit. That's standard practice. The man sat back, not quite convinced, but not objecting. I pulled the March 15th meeting minutes. Lily continued. The criteria change was listed under Administrative Updates. Single line item. No discussion noted. But it represented a fundamental shift in who qualified for funding. The original charter specified students from demonstrably low-income backgrounds who show academic potential. The new criteria specified students demonstrating exceptional academic achievement and leadership credentials. That sounds like an improvement, Vanessa interjected, focusing on merit rather than need. It sounds like that until you look at the actual applications, Lily said, meeting Vanessa's eyes. Under the original criteria, 80% of recipients were first-generation college students. 72% came from families earning less than $40,000 annually. Under the new criteria, those numbers inverted. 80% of this year's recipients came from families earning over $200,000. 65% attended private schools. Murmurs around the table. Vanessa's expression didn't change. The fund's tax exemption is based on serving underprivileged communities, Lily pressed on. The public filings still claim the original mission, but the actual disbursements reflect the changed criteria. That's fraud, not alleged fraud. Actual documentable fraud. That's an interpretation, Vanessa said coldly. The fund serves students. The criteria were updated to ensure the highest quality candidates. The criteria were updated the same week executive bonuses were announced. Lily interrupted. The same week, 3 board members submitted private school tuition receipts through expense reimbursement. The same week, you sent an email to your assistant asking her to research how to legally redirect charitable funds to reduce exposure to applicants who don't fit aspirational brand image. The room went very quiet. Vanessa's composure cracked, just slightly. Those emails are confidential. You had no authorization to access. I had authorization to audit fund administration. Those emails were part of the administrative record. Lily pulled out a folder she'd been clutching. I have copies, time-stamped, unaltered, along with the original charter, the altered charter, and a comparison showing exactly what was changed and when. She slid the folder across the table to the nearest board member. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is absurd. I will not sit here and be accused by a disgruntled former employee who fabricated evidence to support her personal say. Sit down, Vanessa. Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. Vanessa froze. I said sit down. She sat, slowly. Ethan stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. For the past 6 months, I've been conducting my own investigation into operational integrity across senior leadership. Not because I suspected widespread fraud, because I wanted to understand the culture we'd created, whether the systems we built actually served the mission my father founded this company on. He walked around the table, hands in his pockets, tone conversational. I found some interesting things. vendor contracts that looked fine but had unusual payment structures, performance reviews that punished dissent and rewarded compliance, policy changes that happened quietly, without discussion, always moving in the same direction, toward efficiency, toward profit, away from accountability. He stopped behind Vanessa's chair, and I found that whenever someone raised questions, they were managed, reassigned, encouraged to resign, fired for cause. He looked around the table. We created a system that punished people for telling the truth, and then we acted surprised when the truth became something we couldn't recognize. One of the women on the board spoke up. "Are you saying you knew about this scholarship situation?" I suspected. I didn't have proof until Miss Bennett provided it. Ethan moved back toward his seat. "Which is why we're here. Not to decide whether Miss Bennett's evidence is credible. It is. I verified every piece of it independently. We're here to decide what kind of company we want to be going forward." He sat down, folded his hands on the table. "Vanessa altered the scholarship fund to serve a different population than the one we're legally obligated to serve. She did it quietly, with minimal oversight, in a way designed to avoid scrutiny. When challenged, she attempted to discredit the person who found the fraud rather than address the fraud itself. Last night, she fired Miss Bennett for insubordination after pressuring her to sign a false statement. That's not," Vanessa started. "I have the recording," Ethan said quietly. From the conference room, every word. Vanessa's face went white. "You bugged your own conference rooms?" The gray-suited man looked horrified. "I installed monitoring equipment in executive spaces after receiving credible reports of harassment and retaliation. Standard security protocol, approved by legal and clearly posted per state law." Ethan's tone didn't change. "The recording confirms that Miss Bennett was terminated for refusing to sign a false statement, not for misconduct, for refusing to lie." He leaned back in his chair. "So here's what's going to happen. Vanessa, you're done. Terminated for cause effective immediately. No severance, no references, and if legal determines your actions warrant criminal charges, we'll cooperate fully with law enforcement." Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "The scholarship fund will be restored to its original charter. Every application rejected under the altered criteria will be reviewed. Those who qualified under the original standards will be offered funding retroactive to their application date." He looked at Lily. "Miss Bennett will be appointed Director of Ethics and Compliance Oversight, a new position with board-level reporting authority. She'll have full autonomy to investigate and address operational integrity issues across all departments, starting salary commensurate with senior leadership positions. Full benefits. And a formal public apology for last night's termination." The room erupted, board members talking over each other. Vanessa standing up again, her voice rising above the noise. "You can't do this. I have a contract. You violated that contract the moment you altered fund documentation without board approval," Ethan said calmly. "Legal will walk you through the specifics. Carol will escort you out." Carol appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Vanessa looked around the table, searching for allies. Found none. "This isn't over," she said, voice shaking with rage. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It is." Vanessa grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. She paused next to Lily's chair, leaning down close enough to whisper. "You think you won, but you just painted a target on your back. Every executive in this building is going to come for you now." Lily looked up at her. "Let them come." Vanessa's mouth tightened. Then she was gone, Carol trailing behind her. The board members were still talking, debating, questioning. Ethan fielded them smoothly, pulling up documents on the screen at the front of the room, walking them through evidence and timelines and legal exposure. Lily sat very still and tried to process what had just happened. She had a job, not just any job, a position with actual power, authority, the ability to change things, the ability to make enemies. Vanessa's parting shot echoed in her head. "Every executive in this building is going to come for you now." She was probably right. Lily had just humiliated a senior VP in front of the board, had exposed corruption that implicated other people, those board members with tuition receipts, the managers who'd approved policy changes without question. They weren't going to thank her for it, but she'd also just proven that speaking up didn't have to end in destruction, that truth could win, sometimes, with the right backing. The meeting continued for another hour. Details hammered out, procedures established, legal reviewed. By the time the board members started filing out, Lily's head was spinning. Ethan walked over to her as the last board member left. "You okay?" "I don't know yet." He pulled out the chair next to her and sat down. Not at the head of the table anymore, just beside her. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "The way you presented the evidence. You didn't flinch." "I was terrified." "I know. You did it anyway." He was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't tell you who I was sooner." Lily looked at him. Really looked at him, trying to reconcile the man in the expensive suit with the janitor who'd cleaned up her spilled soup. "Which version was real?" she asked. "Ray or Ethan?" "Both, neither." He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly tired. "Ray was me trying to remember who I used to be." Before the company got too big, before every conversation became a negotiation. Ethan is who I have to be to keep this whole thing running. "And which one is talking to me right now?" Ethan met her eyes. "I'm trying to figure that out." Something in his voice made Lily's chest tighten. This wasn't a CEO managing an employee. This was a person who'd spent 2 months having real conversations with someone who didn't know who he was, and now didn't know how to have those conversations anymore. "I'm still mad at you," Lily said. "You should be. You lied to me for months. I omitted information. There's a difference." "Not really." Lily stood up, needing to move. "You let me think you were someone who understood what it's like to be invisible, to have no power. And maybe you do understand it intellectually, but you own the building, Ethan. You're not invisible. You're choosing to be." "That's fair. And now you've given me this job, this position, and I don't know if it's because you think I earned it or because you feel guilty. Can it be both?" Lily stopped pacing. "I need to know I can trust you." "You can." "Can I? Because right now it feels like you're playing chess and I'm a piece you moved into position." She crossed her arms. "What happens when I investigate something you don't want investigated? When I find problems that implicate you or your decisions?" Ethan stood up, facing her. "Then you do your job. That's the point." "Easy to say now." "You're right. It is." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "So let me say this. I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes running this company. I've prioritized growth over people, profits over principles, and I'm trying to fix that. But I'm also smart enough to know I can't do it alone. I need someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong, someone who'll push back, someone who gives a damn about getting it right, even when it's hard." He held her gaze. "I need you to be that person, even if it costs me, especially if it costs me." Lily wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this wasn't just another performance. "Prove it," she said. "How?" "Dinner, tonight, just us. No roles, no company business, no talking about what happened." She took a breath. "If you can be honest about who you are, really honest, not performing Ray or Ethan, then maybe we can figure out if this works." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, 7 o'clock. I know a place. Not somewhere fancy. I was thinking the noodle shop on 5th Street, the one with the plastic chairs." Lily blinked. "You know about that place?" Ray knew about it. He used to grab dinner there on break. A small smile. "Ethan's going to have to learn." And despite everything, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty, Lily smiled back. Lily spent the afternoon in what used to be a storage closet on the 19th floor. Carol had apologized 3 times for the temporary workspace, but Lily barely noticed. It had a window. That alone made it better than Section D. She'd been given a laptop, building access credentials that actually worked on all floors, and a stack of files Carol described as pending ethics complaints that never went anywhere. The stack was 14 inches high. Lily opened the first file and immediately understood why it had gone nowhere. Sexual harassment complaint from an administrative assistant against her direct supervisor. Filed 8 months ago. Investigated by HR. Conclusion: insufficient evidence to support disciplinary action. Complainant counseled on professional workplace interactions. The complainant had resigned 2 weeks later. Lily flipped through the file. The assistant's statement was detailed, specific, included dates and witnesses. The supervisor's statement was 2 paragraphs of denial. HR had interviewed exactly 1 witness, the supervisor's friend from the same department, who said she'd never seen anything inappropriate. They hadn't interviewed any of the other witnesses the assistant listed, hadn't pulled email records or security footage, just took the supervisor's word and closed the case. Lily made a note on her laptop. Reopen. Full investigation. External investigator. The second file was a whistleblower report about safety violations in the warehouse, filed 6 months ago by a floor supervisor, investigated by operations. Conclusion. Concerns addressed through enhanced training protocols, no structural violations found. The supervisor who filed the report had been transferred to a different facility 3 states away a month later. Lily added it to her list. By 4 o'clock, she'd gone through 8 files. Every single one followed the same pattern. Employee reports problem. Company investigates itself. Company finds no problem. Employee leaves or gets transferred or gets quietly managed out. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is what you signed up for. Hope you're ready. Marcus Lilly frowned at the screen. Marcus from Acquisitions? The one with the coffee breath and opinions about her lunch choices? Before she could respond, another text came through. Different number. Good luck with your little crusade. You're going to need it. Then another. Director of Ethics? That's hilarious. You couldn't even keep your own job. Lily set her phone face down on the desk and tried to focus on the files. But the texts kept coming. Different numbers, same message. Some were crude. Some were threatening. All of them made it clear that word had spread fast about what happened in the boardroom. By 4:30, she'd received 23 messages. She forwarded them all to IT with a request to trace the numbers and identify the senders. Then she blocked everyone and went back to the files. The 9th file made her stomach turn. Expense fraud reported by a junior accountant. The accountant had found that a senior director was submitting fake receipts for business travel, trips that never happened, hotels he never stayed in. The amounts were small, a few $100s here and there, but over 2 years it added up to almost $40,000. The investigation had been handled by the director's own department. Conclusion. Reconciliation error. Director reimbursed company for disputed amounts. No evidence of intentional wrongdoing. The junior accountant had been fired 3 weeks later for repeated timesheet violations. Lily's hands clenched on the edge of the desk. This was what Ethan had meant. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed, to protect people at the top and punish people at the bottom. She pulled up a blank email and started typing. 2. Board of Directors. CC Ethan Cole. Subject, Ethics Oversight. Initial assessment. I've reviewed 9 of the pending ethics files provided to me. All 9 cases show evidence of inadequate investigation, conflicts of interest in the investigation process, and potential retaliation against complainants. I'm recommending immediate reopening of all cases with external investigators and a full audit of the ethics complaint process for the past 3 years. I'm also requesting authorization to implement the following changes. 1. All ethics complaints will be handled by my office, not by HR or departmental management. 2. Complainants will have the option of anonymous reporting with guaranteed protection from retaliation. 3. Any employee who experiences retaliation for filing a complaint will have direct escalation to the board. 4. Investigation findings will be reviewed by an independent panel before closure. I understand this represents a significant shift in how we've handled these matters, but the current process isn't protecting employees or the company. It's protecting people who abuse their authority. I'll have a full proposal ready by end of week. Lily Bennett, Director of Ethics and Compliance Oversight. She read it through twice, finger hovering over send just like it had last night with that other email, the one that had destroyed her old life and started this new one she didn't know how to navigate. Then she clicked send and watched it go. Her phone rang immediately. Ethan. You've been in the job for 6 hours, he said without preamble. Is that a problem? It's impressive, and probably going to generate about 50 angry phone calls to my office. From board members? From executives who are suddenly very concerned about operational disruption and employee morale. She could hear the smile in his voice. Carol's already fielding them. Should I slow down? No, you should keep doing exactly what you're doing. A pause. How bad are the files? Bad. And these are just the ones that made it far enough to generate paperwork. I'm guessing there are a lot more that never got filed at all because people knew it wouldn't matter. Probably. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry you're dealing with this alone. I'm not alone. I have you, right? The silence stretched longer than it should have. Right? Lily repeated. Yes. Of course, there are going to be people who push back hard on this. People with a lot of influence. I know. And I can protect you from some of it, but not all of it. There are board members who are already questioning whether creating this position was the right move. Lily's chest tightened. You're having second thoughts. No, I'm having realistic thoughts about what you're walking into. His voice softened. This isn't going to be easy, Lily. I didn't think it would be. Good. Because I need you to be sure. Once you start pulling these threads, there's no way to put them back. I'm sure. Okay? She heard him take a breath. Then I'll handle this board. You handle the files, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. After he hung up, Lily sat staring at her laptop screen. The email had already generated 3 responses. One from a board member expressing concerns about procedural overreach. One from the head of HR requesting an urgent meeting to discuss operational impact. One from legal asking for clarification on investigative authority and liability exposure. Not a single one said she was wrong about the files. Lily started drafting responses. By 6:30, her eyes were burning and her neck hurt from hunching over the laptop. She'd gone through 15 files total. 15 employees who tried to do the right thing and got crushed for it. 15 cases that should have resulted in accountability, but ended in silence. She was adding the last file to her list when someone knocked on the door. Lily looked up. A woman in her mid-40s stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression guarded. She looked familiar, but Lily couldn't place her. Can I help you? I'm Jennifer Park, Senior Analyst in Finance. The woman stepped into the room. I heard about what happened in the board meeting this morning. News travels fast. It does when a senior VP gets fired in front of everyone. Jennifer closed the door behind her. Is it true? That you're really going to investigate all the buried complaints? Lily studied her. Jennifer's posture was defensive, but her eyes were desperate. Yes. All of them? Even the ones from years ago? As far back as I can get records. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She set it on Lily's desk carefully, like it might explode. What is this? Lily asked. My complaint. From 4 years ago. I reported my manager for altering financial projections to make his department look better than it was. He was overstating revenue and hiding expenses so he'd hit his bonus targets. Jennifer's voice was steady, but her hands shook. I had documentation, emails, spreadsheets showing the real numbers versus what he reported. What happened? HR said I misunderstood the accounting procedures, that I was too new to know how projections worked at the executive level. My manager said I was creating a hostile work environment by making false accusations. She laughed bitterly. I got written up for insubordination. He got promoted 6 months later. Lily opened the folder. Documentation, just like Jennifer said. Screenshots of emails. Original spreadsheets with handwritten notes in the margins showing where numbers had been changed. Why didn't you push back? Lily asked quietly. I tried. I went to finance leadership. They told me to drop it or I'd be fired, so I dropped it. Jennifer met Lily's eyes. I've been carrying this folder for 4 years. Didn't throw it away because I kept thinking someday someone would care. But nobody ever did. I care. Do you? Jennifer's voice cracked. Because I've heard that before. HR cares. Leadership cares. The ethics hotline cares. And then nothing happens and you realize they only care about making you go away quietly. Lily stood up and walked around the desk. She took the folder and set it deliberately on top of her stack of files. I'm not HR. I'm not leadership. And I'm definitely not the ethics hotline that reports to the people it's supposed to investigate. She looked at Jennifer. I'm someone who got fired last night for refusing to lie, who sent an email at 1 a.m. knowing it would cost everything, who's standing here right now because I got lucky enough that someone believed me. The CEO. Yeah, the CEO. Lily gestured at the stack of files. And he gave me the authority to do something about all of this. So I'm asking you, do you want me to investigate your complaint? For real this time? Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Okay, then I will. I'll need you to walk me through everything. Timeline, who you talked to, what they said, and I need you to be prepared for the fact that this might get ugly. Your manager is probably still here. He's not going to be happy. He's a VP now, 3 levels above me. Even better. Nothing says accountability like taking down someone who thought they were untouchable. Lily picked up a pen. Give me his name. Jennifer hesitated, then she said, David Chen, VP of Financial Planning. Lily wrote it down. Anyone else I should know about? People who knew what he did and helped cover it up? His boss at the time was Richard Moss. He's Chief Financial Officer now. Of course he was. Lily added the name to her notes. Okay, I'll start with your documentation and work backward. If Chen altered projections, there will be a trail. Board presentations, investor calls, regulatory filings. I'll find it. And if you don't? If he covered his tracks too well? Then I'll find something else. People who do this once do it more than once, and they get sloppy because they think they're protected. Lily set down her pen. Trust me on that. Jennifer wiped her eyes. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Risking everything for people you don't even know. You could just sit in this office and collect a paycheck and not make waves. Why fight? Lily thought about her mother working 3 jobs, about the scholarship she'd applied for and didn't get, about all the nights in Section D reading reports nobody else bothered to read because someone had to care about getting it right. Because someone has to, she said simply. And I'm tired of waiting for that someone to be somebody else. Jennifer nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and hugged Lily, quick and awkward, but genuine. Thank you, she whispered. Then she was gone, leaving Lily alone with 16 files and the growing certainty that this was going to be even harder than she'd thought. By the time Lily made it down to the lobby, it was 7:10. She'd texted Ethan that she was running late, but he'd just responded with the address and no rush. The noodle shop on 5th Street was exactly the kind of place Lily would never have pictured a billionaire CEO eating. Fluorescent lights, mismatched plastic chairs, laminated menus with pictures. The smell of garlic and chili oil hit her the moment she walked in. Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table in jeans and a sweater. Not the suit from this morning, not the janitor's uniform, just clothes that looked lived in and comfortable. He stood when he saw her. Hey. Hey. Lily slid into the seat across from him. Sorry I'm late. Don't be. I ordered already. Hope that's okay. They make everything fresh, so it takes a while. What'd you get? The Dan Dan noodles and the wontons in chili oil. We can share. Lily realized she hadn't eaten since the crackers at 6 this morning. Her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. Ethan smiled. Long day? You could say that. She accepted the tea he poured for her. How many angry phone calls did Carol field? 73, but who's counting? 73 executives are mad at me, and it's only day 1. That's got to be some kind of record. It's actually pretty impressive. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Though I should tell you that 5 of those calls were from board members suggesting that maybe we moved too fast. That perhaps a more measured approach would give everyone time to bury evidence and coordinate stories. Yeah, I figured. Lily wrapped her hands around the teacup. Are they going to pull my authority? Not if I have anything to say about it. But they could. Ethan was quiet for a moment. They could. If enough board members decide this is too disruptive, they could vote to restructure your position, make it advisory instead of operational, take away your investigative authority. So I'm on borrowed time. We're all on borrowed time. The question is what we do with it. He met her eyes. You rattled a lot of cages today. That's good. It means people are paying attention, but it also means you need to deliver results fast. Show the board that this isn't just disruption for its own sake. I have 16 cases ready to reopen. 17 now, after Jennifer Park came to see me. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Jennifer came to you directly? With documentation of financial fraud her manager committed 4 years ago. Fraud that HR buried. Lily paused. Her manager is David Chen, VP of Financial Planning. Chen reports to Richard Moss. I know. Ethan was very still. You're going after the CFO. I'm going after whoever the evidence leads to. If that's the CFO, then yeah. Lily. Ethan leaned forward. Richard Moss has been with this company for 20 years. He's on the board. He has relationships with every major investor. If you accuse him of covering up fraud, I'm not accusing him of anything yet. I'm investigating a complaint filed by an employee who had documentation and was ignored. If the investigation leads to Moss, then we deal with that. And if the board decides you're on a witch hunt, that you're targeting senior leadership to make a point, then I guess we find out if you meant what you said this morning about backing me, even if it costs you. The food arrived. Steam rising from bowls of noodles slicked with chili oil, wontons floating in their sauce. The owner set everything down with a smile and disappeared back to the kitchen. Ethan picked up his chopsticks but didn't eat. This isn't a test, Lily. I'm on your side. But I need you to understand the reality. If you go after Moss and you're wrong, they'll use it to discredit everything else you've found. I'm not wrong. How do you know? Because Jennifer Park spent 4 years carrying around documentation of fraud that nobody would investigate. Because when people cover things up, they don't just do it once. And because every single file I've read today follows the same pattern, employee reports problem, company protects the person with power. Lily picked up her own chopsticks. If Moss was Chen's boss when Chen was altering projections, and if Moss got promoted to CFO while Chen moved up too, then either Moss didn't know what was happening on his watch, or he knew and didn't care. Either way, that's a problem. Or Chen was good at hiding it. Maybe. That's why I'm investigating instead of just firing people. Lily met his eyes. You wanted someone who'd tell you when you're wrong. Someone who'd push back. This is me pushing back. You don't get to only support me when it's convenient. Ethan set down his chopsticks. That's fair. Is it? Because it feels like you're already hedging, preparing to pull back if this gets too messy. I'm not hedging. I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're walking into. I understand perfectly. I understand that people with power protect each other. That the system is designed to make sure people like me don't threaten people like you. That the second I become too inconvenient, I'll be managed out just like everyone else. Lily's voice was rising, and she didn't care. What I need to know is whether you're actually different or whether you're just better at pretending. The table next to them glanced over. Lily lowered her voice. This morning you said you needed me to tell you the truth, even if it costs you. But I don't think you actually considered what that cost might be. Because going after Moss means going after someone you've worked with for 2 decades. Someone who probably helped build this company. Someone you might actually like. I do like him, Ethan said quietly. He's a good CFO. And if he's also someone who covered up fraud? Ethan picked up his teacup, drank, set it down. Then he's not the person I thought he was. Are you? The question hung between them. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know yet. Ask me again when this is over. It wasn't the answer Lily wanted, but it was honest. They ate in silence for a while. The noodles were good. Exactly the kind of cheap, perfect meal that reminded Lily why she'd loved this neighborhood. The kind of place where you could sit for hours and nobody would rush you. How's Emma? Lily asked finally. Ethan's expression shifted, softened. She's good. With her mom this week, but I talked to her this morning before school. Did you tell her you did something good yesterday? I told her I tried. He smiled slightly. She asked if I cleaned any floors. Apparently I told her that's what I was doing at work. Not technically a lie. No, just extremely misleading. He set down his chopsticks. I've been thinking about that, about how much I kept from her, from everyone. Why did you do it, really? Ethan was quiet, turning his teacup in slow circles. 5 years ago, right after Emma was born, my father died. Heart attack. Completely unexpected. He was here one day, gone the next. And suddenly I was running a company I didn't really understand, raising a daughter I had no idea how to parent, and trying to hold together a marriage that was already falling apart. He paused, collecting his thoughts. I made a lot of mistakes, hired the wrong people, trusted people I shouldn't have, focused so much on growth and numbers that I forgot what the company was supposed to be about. And by the time I looked up, I was surrounded by yes men and opportunists and people who told me what I wanted to hear instead of what I needed to know. So you became a janitor. So I tried to remember what it felt like to be the person my father was. The guy who knew everyone's name, who listened, who understood that a company is just people, And if you don't take care of the people, the rest doesn't matter. Ethan met her eyes. I needed to know if there was anyone left here who actually gave a damn, or if I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. And I found you. He smiled. Feeding the help, fighting for scholarship kids you'd never meet, staying late in a freezing office because you believed the work mattered. Lily looked down at her bowl. I'm not special. There are probably lots of people like me. Maybe. But you're the one who sent the email. You're the one who refused to recant. You're the one sitting here now, planning to go after a CFO on your first day, knowing it might destroy you. He leaned forward. That's not common, Lily. That's rare. Or stupid. Sometimes those are the same thing. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. I'm not going to pull back. Even if it gets messy. Even if Moss is involved. I meant what I said this morning. Prove it. How? Lily pulled out her phone and opened the folder of screenshots she'd been collecting. These are the texts I got today. 23 messages from people in the company. Some are crude, some are threatening. All of them are trying to intimidate me into backing off. She slid the phone across the table. Ethan scrolled through them, his expression darkening with each message. These came from company phones. Some of them. Others from personal numbers. But they all knew details about the board meeting that weren't public. Someone's been talking. I'll have IT trace every one of these. Anyone using company resources to harass you is fired immediately. And the ones who used personal phones, investigated, disciplined, put on notice that retaliation won't be tolerated. He handed back her phone. This is exactly the kind of thing your office should be handling. Forward these to Carol and she'll route them to IT and legal. I already sent them to IT. Good. He paused. Are you okay? Some of these are pretty threatening. I'm fine. Lily. I'm fine, she repeated more firmly. I grew up with worse. These are just words from people who are scared I'm going to find out what they've been hiding. Ethan studied her. You're not even a little afraid? I'm terrified, but I'm also too stubborn to let that stop me. She picked up her chopsticks again. Besides, I've already been fired once this week. What else can they do? A lot, actually. They can make your life miserable, sabotage your investigations, spread rumors, make it impossible for you to do your job. Then I'll work around them. You can't work around everyone. No, but I can outlast them. They'll get tired of fighting eventually, or they'll make a mistake, and when they do, I'll have them. Lily met his eyes. That's the thing about people who've always had power. They're not used to someone saying no and meaning it. Ethan smiled. Actually smiled, not the careful corporate version. You know what I think? What? I think you're going to be really good at this job. Or really bad. Same thing, probably. They finished eating, the conversation shifting to safer topics. Emma's favorite bedtime story. The broken heater in Lily's apartment. Ethan offered to have it fixed, and she declined, said she'd already called the landlord again, and threatened legal action. The neighborhood where the noodle shop was, which Ethan admitted he'd discovered during one of his late-night walks when he couldn't sleep. By the time they left, it was after 9. The street was quiet, cold enough that their breath fogged in the air. Can I give you a ride home, Bull? Ethan asked. I can take the bus. Lily, it's late and you've had a long day. Let me give you a ride. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. The car was the same black sedan from this morning. Ethan opened the door for her and she slid into the back seat, feeling strange about being driven by someone whose company she'd just shared dinner with. Ethan got in next to her instead of sitting in front. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly. Thank you for tonight, Lily said quietly. For being honest. Thank you for calling me out when I wasn't. He looked at her. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. The balance between being your boss and being your friend, between supporting you and managing the board, between wanting to protect you and knowing you don't need protection. I might need protection. No, you need backup. There's a difference. Lily leaned her head against the window, watching the city slide past. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow you keep investigating. I keep running interference with the board, and we both try not to burn the whole thing down in the process. What if burning it down is the only way to fix it? Ethan was quiet. Then he said, Then I guess we better have a good fire extinguisher. The car pulled up in front of Lily's building. The streetlight was out again. Someone had left a couch on the sidewalk with a free sign that had been there for 3 weeks. "This is me," Lily said. Ethan looked at the building. "Your heater's still broken?" "Probably." "I could—" "No, I've got it handled." She opened the door, then paused. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "If I find something tomorrow that implicates Moss or anyone else at the top and the board pushes back, what are you going to do?" He met her eyes. "Back you. Even if it costs me." "Promise?" "Promise." Lily nodded and got out of the car. She didn't look back as she walked to the building entrance, but she could feel him watching until she got inside. Her apartment was freezing. The landlord hadn't fixed anything. Lily wrapped herself in blankets and opened her laptop, pulling up the files Jennifer had given her. She worked until almost midnight, cross-referencing projections with actual revenue reports, finding discrepancies, building a timeline. And with every piece of evidence she found, the picture got clearer and worse. David Chen had altered projections for 3 consecutive years. Small amounts at first, then larger. And every altered projection had been reviewed and approved by Richard Moss. Either Moss was incompetent or complicit. Lily's phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. "Did the heater get fixed?" She smiled despite herself. "No. But I've got blankets. That's not the same thing." "I know, but it's what I've got." A pause. Then, "Stubborn. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's going to get you in trouble." "Too late." Another pause. "Get some sleep, Lily. Tomorrow's going to be harder." She set down her phone and looked at the files spread across her bed. Evidence of fraud, cover-ups, retaliation, all of it documented, all of it ignored, all of it waiting for someone to care enough to do something. Lily pulled the blankets tighter and got back to work. Tomorrow would be harder. But she was ready. The email from Richard Moss hit Lily's inbox at 6:47 a.m. before she'd even made it to the office. Subject: Meeting request. Urgent. "Lily, I'd like to discuss some concerns regarding your recent communications to the board. Please come to my office at 8 a.m. sharp. This is not optional. Richard Moss, CFO." Lily read it twice while standing on the bus, one hand gripping the overhead rail. Not optional. The phrasing was deliberate. A power play. An attempt to establish hierarchy before they'd even spoken. She forwarded it to Ethan without comment and watched the 3 dots appear almost immediately. "Don't go alone. I'll be there. You don't have to. I'll be there." Lily pocketed her phone and watched the city wake up through the grimy bus windows. Commuters with coffee cups and headphones. A woman pushing a stroller. A man in a suit checking his watch like those 30 seconds might actually matter. All of them moving through their morning routines while Lily was about to walk into a confrontation that could end her 2-day-old career. By 7:45, she was sitting in the small office that still smelled like storage closet, reviewing the Chen documentation one more time. The numbers were damning. 3 years of altered projections, all approved by Moss. Either he'd never looked at what he was signing, or he'd looked and didn't care. Ethan appeared in her doorway at 7:52, coffee in each hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. Lily accepted it gratefully. "You didn't have to come." "Yeah, I did." He leaned against the doorframe. "Moss is old school. He's going to try to intimidate you, make you feel small, act like you're overstepping." "I am overstepping. That's kind of the point." "True. But you're overstepping with authority I gave you, which means if he has a problem with what you're doing, his problem is with me." Ethan took a sip of his coffee. "Let him make that clear." They walked to Moss's office together. 22nd floor, corner suite, windows overlooking the financial district. His assistant waved them through with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Richard Moss stood when they entered. 60-something, silver hair, suit that probably cost more than Lily's monthly rent. He shook Ethan's hand warmly, then turned to Lily with considerably less warmth. "Miss Bennett, thank you for coming." "You said it wasn't optional." Moss's smile went thinner. "Please, sit." Ethan took the chair next to Lily, a silent statement of solidarity that Moss couldn't miss. Something flickered across the CFO's face, surprise maybe, or concern, but he recovered quickly. "I'll get straight to the point," Moss said, settling into his own chair. Your email to the board yesterday was concerning. You're recommending reopening cases that were thoroughly investigated and properly closed. You're questioning the judgment of experienced executives and suggesting that our entire ethics process is fundamentally flawed. That's accurate, Lily said. It's also reckless. You've been in this position for exactly 1 day. You don't have the institutional knowledge to understand why certain decisions were made. You're operating from incomplete information and drawing conclusions that could damage this company's reputation. The incomplete investigations damage the company's reputation. I'm just documenting it. Moss's jaw tightened. The investigations were complete. They followed standard protocol. Standard protocol that allowed supervisors to investigate their own subordinates, that prioritized protecting executives over protecting employees, that closed cases without interviewing witnesses or reviewing evidence. Lily kept her voice level. With respect, Mr. Moss, if that's your definition of complete, then we have very different standards. My definition of complete is based on 30 years of experience in corporate governance. Then maybe it's time for a new definition. The room went very quiet. Moss looked at Ethan. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? I'm going to let her do her job, Ethan replied calmly, which includes questioning processes that aren't working. If you have concerns about her methods, we can discuss those. But she's not required to defer to seniority when presenting evidence. Evidence! Moss said the word like it tasted bad. She's been here 1 day and she's already convinced she's found widespread corruption. I found 17 cases where employees reported misconduct and were either ignored or retaliated against, Lily interrupted. 17 cases where the investigations were handled by people with direct conflicts of interest. That's not a conclusion. That's math. Cases from different departments, different managers, different circumstances. Moss leaned forward. You're trying to create a pattern where there isn't one. Am I? Lily pulled out a folder. Because I found something interesting when I looked at the timeline. 14 of those 17 cases involved employees reporting problems with people above them. And in every single case, the person doing the reporting either resigned, was transferred, or was fired within 6 months. That's coincidence. All 14? That's not coincidence, that's retaliation. Lily opened the folder and slid a spreadsheet across the desk. I mapped it out. Complaint filed, investigation opened, investigation closed with no finding, employee gone. Over and over. For 3 years. Moss picked up the spreadsheet, his expression hardening as he scanned it. And here's the really interesting part, Lily continued. 10 of those 14 cases were investigated by HR personnel who reported directly to the executives being accused. 3 were investigated by legal, which gets bonuses based on how few settlements the company pays out. 1 was investigated by you. Moss set down the spreadsheet very carefully. Excuse me? Jennifer Park, 4 years ago. She reported that David Chen was altering financial projections. Chen reported to you at the time. You personally reviewed her complaint and determined it was unfounded. I reviewed the documentation she provided and found no evidence of intentional wrongdoing. You found reconciliation errors. That's what you called them in your report. Small accounting mistakes, easily explained. Lily pulled out another document. But I pulled the original projections Chen submitted and compared them to the actual revenue reports. The discrepancies weren't small and they weren't random. They consistently overstated performance by 5 to 8%. Just enough to hit bonus targets, just small enough to avoid triggering automatic audits. Moss's face had gone very still. You're accusing David Chen of fraud. I'm saying Jennifer Park accused him of fraud 4 years ago, and you closed the case without a real investigation. I absolutely conducted a real investigation. You interviewed Chen and his immediate supervisor. You didn't talk to Jennifer's witnesses. You didn't pull the source data. You didn't compare Chen's projections to anyone else's in the department to see if his were outliers. Lily kept her tone factual, clinical. Either you didn't want to find fraud, or you didn't care if it was there. I'm not sure which is worse. Moss stood abruptly. This is outrageous. Ethan, she's accusing me of covering up financial crimes. She's reviewing a complaint that was filed 4 years ago, Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. Is the review inaccurate? It's incomplete. She doesn't have all the context. Then provide the context. Walk her through your investigation. Show her what she's missing. Ethan met Moss's eyes. If there's an innocent explanation, I'd like to hear it. Moss looked between them, and Lily saw the moment he realized Ethan wasn't going to shut this down. That the CEO he'd worked with for 20 years was actually going to let this junior analyst question him. I need to speak with legal, Moss said finally. That's your right, Ethan agreed. But Lily's investigation continues. If you have documentation from your original review, please provide it to her office by end of day. And if I refuse? Then I'll have to wonder why. Ethan stood. Richard, I'm not trying to ambush you, but 17 employees filed complaints that went nowhere. If even some of those complaints were legitimate, we have a serious problem. And if they weren't legitimate, we need to understand why people felt the process was so broken that they left the company rather than trust it. Moss's hands clenched on the edge of his desk. You're making a mistake, both of you. This kind of aggressive internal investigation, it creates paranoia, destroys morale, makes people afraid to make decisions. Good, Lily said. People should be afraid to make bad decisions. That's called accountability. That's called a witch hunt. No. A witch hunt is what happened to Jennifer Park when she tried to report fraud and got written up for creating a hostile work environment. Lily stood as well. I'm just finishing what she started. She walked to the door, then paused and looked back. One more thing, Mr. Moss. Chen got promoted 6 months after Jennifer's complaint was closed. He's a VP now. If I find evidence that he committed fraud and you knew about it, I'm not going to bury it to protect you. I'm going to take it to the board and let them decide what to do. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Lily walked out. Ethan followed a moment later, leaving Moss standing behind his desk, looking like he'd just been hit by something he hadn't seen coming. In the hallway, Ethan waited until they were out of earshot of Moss's assistant before speaking. That was riskier than it needed to be. He needed to know I'm serious. He knows. Now he also knows exactly what you're looking for, which gives him time to prepare a defense. Ethan pressed the elevator button. You should have held back some of your evidence, made him think you had less than you do. I don't want him preparing a defense. I want him scared enough to make a mistake. The elevator arrived and they stepped in. People who are scared get sloppy. They reach out to co-conspirators. They delete things they shouldn't delete. They create new evidence while trying to hide old evidence. Ethan looked at her with something like admiration. You've thought about this. I spent all night thinking about this. Lily leaned against the elevator wall. Moss has been here 20 years. He has relationships, leverage, protection. If I try to build a case slowly and quietly, he'll see it coming and shut me down. But if I hit him fast and hard, make him react instead of plan, maybe he makes a mistake I can use. Or maybe he convinces the board you're on a vendetta and they pull your authority. Then I guess I'd better find something solid before that happens. The elevator doors opened on the 19th floor. Carol was waiting, tablet in hand, expression urgent. Mr. Cole, you have 4 board members holding on conference lines. They're asking for an emergency meeting about Miss Bennett's investigation. Ethan sighed. Of course they are. Tell them I'll call them back in 20 minutes. They're insisting on 20 minutes, Carol. She nodded and hurried back to her desk. Ethan turned to Lily. You've got the board's attention. That's good and bad. Good because it means they're taking this seriously. Bad because some of them are friends with Moss. They're going to push back hard. Can you hold them off? For now. But Lily, you need to give me something concrete, not just patterns and timelines. Actual evidence of wrongdoing. Something that can't be explained away as interpretation or judgment calls. I'm working on it. Work faster. His tone wasn't unkind, just realistic. You have maybe 48 hours before the board forces a meeting. If you walk into that meeting with what you have now, they'll say you're overreaching. But if you have proof, real, undeniable proof, they'll have to listen. Lily nodded. Then I'd better get to work. She spent the next 6 hours buried in financial records. Chen's projections, actual revenue reports, board presentations, investor calls, every piece of documentation she could access through her new system privileges. The picture that emerged was damning. Chen had been systematically inflating projections for 3 years, not by enough to raise immediate red flags, just enough to make his department look consistently better than it was. And every quarter, when actual revenue came in lower than projected, he'd had explanations ready. Market conditions, delayed contracts, timing issues. But the pattern was clear, and it had only stopped 8 months ago, right around the time Vanessa had been restructuring departments and Chen had been moved to a new role. Lily was cross-referencing bonus payments when someone knocked on her door. She looked up to find a man in his 30s, nervous expression, hands shoved in his pockets. "Can I help you?" "I'm Marcus Chen, David's brother." He stepped into the office uninvited. "We need to talk." Lily's hand moved toward her phone. "If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to help you." Marcus closed the door behind him. "My brother's been lying for years. I can prove it." Lily studied him. Marcus had David's features, but none of his polish. Wrinkled shirt, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "Why would you help me build a case against your own brother?" "Because I'm tired of covering for him." Marcus pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it on her desk. "This has everything. The original spreadsheets before he altered them, emails where he told me to delete records, instructions on how to manipulate the data without triggering audits." "You helped him commit fraud." "Yeah, I did." Marcus's voice was flat. "He's my brother. He said it was temporary, that he just needed to hit his numbers for 1 quarter and then everything would balance out. But 1 quarter became 2, became a year, became 3 years. And by then I was in too deep to walk away without destroying my own career." Lily picked up the flash drive. "What changed?" "Jennifer Park. I was one of her witnesses, the one HR never interviewed." Marcus sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. "She came to me, showed me what she'd found, asked me to confirm it, and I lied. Told her she was wrong. Watched her get fired for trying to do the right thing while my brother got promoted." "So this is guilt. This is me trying to sleep at night again." He met her eyes. "Look, I know I'm complicit. I know I'm probably going to lose my job or worse. But if I can help take down David and Moss and everyone else who knew what was happening, then maybe it's worth it." "Moss knew?" "Moss approved every altered projection, signed off on every investor presentation. He had to know the numbers didn't add up." Marcus leaned forward. "There's an email on that drive from Moss to David. 3 years ago. It says, 'I need the Q3 numbers to look better. Make it happen.' That's it. No specifics. But David knew exactly what it meant." Lily plugged the flash drive into her laptop and started scanning files, spreadsheets, emails, meeting notes, everything Marcus had described. "Why now?" she asked, not looking up from the screen. "You could have come forward years ago." "I could have, but I was scared. And then yesterday I heard what you did in the board meeting, how you took on Vanessa Hale and won. And I thought maybe if you could do that, maybe I could do this." Lily looked at him. "You understand what this means? If I use this evidence, you're going to be investigated too, potentially prosecuted." "I know. You could lose everything." "I already lost everything that mattered when I lied for him." Marcus stood. "Use it. Do whatever you need to do. I'll testify, sign statements, whatever helps." He walked to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Jennifer deserved better. A lot of people did. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to help them." After he left, Lily sat staring at the flash drive. This was it. The concrete evidence Ethan had asked for. Proof that Chen had committed fraud and that Moss had not only known about it, but encouraged it. She called Ethan. "I've got it," she said when he answered. "Everything we need." "How solid?" "Emails, spreadsheets, a witness willing to testify, all of it documented, time-stamped, undeniable." Silence. Then, "How fast can you put together a presentation?" "Give me 3 hours." "You've got 2. Board meeting at 4 o'clock. I already scheduled it." He paused. "Lily, this is going to get ugly. Moss is going to fight. The board is going to question everything. You need to be ready." "I'm ready." "Okay. See you at 4. Lily hung up and got to work. She built the presentation methodically, each slide backed by documentation, the timeline, the altered projections, the emails, Marcus's testimony. All of it leading inexorably to the same conclusion. David Chen had committed fraud, Richard Moss had enabled it, and the company's ethics process had failed completely. By 3:45, she was standing outside the boardroom with a printed copy of her presentation and her laptop ready. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She'd done everything she could. Ethan arrived at 3:50, Carol trailing behind him. "Board's already inside," he said. "Moss is in there too. He asked to be present for your presentation." "Good. Let him watch." Ethan smiled slightly. "You're not nervous at all, are you?" "I'm terrified, but I've been terrified before." Lily met his eyes. "This is just another email at 1:17 in the morning, another choice to tell the truth even when it costs everything. Except this time you're not alone." "No, this time I'm not." They walked in together. The board was arranged around the same table as before. 12 faces, most of them skeptical. Moss sat near the middle, expression carefully neutral. Ethan took his seat at the head of the table. Lily stood at the presentation screen. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Ethan began. "Miss Bennett has completed her initial review of the ethics complaints I asked her to investigate. Her findings are significant. I'll let her present them." Lily pulled up the first slide. Timeline of complaints. 17 employees filed ethics complaints in the past 3 years. 14 of those employees left the company within 6 months. All 17 cases were closed with findings of no wrongdoing. This suggested either we have perfect ethics compliance or our investigation process is broken. Next slide. Investigation methodology. I reviewed each case individually. I found that in every instance, investigations were conducted by personnel with direct or indirect conflicts of interest. Supervisors investigating subordinates. HR representatives whose bonuses depend on avoiding settlements. And in one case, an executive investigating a complaint against someone who reported to him. She looked directly at Moss. He didn't flinch. Next slide. The Chen case. 4 years ago, Jennifer Park reported that David Chen was altering financial projections to inflate his department's performance. She provided documentation. She named witnesses. The investigation was handled by Richard Moss, who was Chen's supervisor at the time. Murmurs around the table. One board member, the woman who'd spoken up at the last meeting, leaned forward. "And what did Mr. Moss's investigation find?" "Reconciliation errors. Small mistakes easily explained. No evidence of intentional wrongdoing." Lily clicked to the next slide. "But I pulled the original source data. These are Chen's projections compared to actual revenue for 3 years. But the graph showed it clearly. Projections consistently 5 to 8% higher than actuals, quarter after quarter, year after year. This isn't reconciliation error. This is systematic inflation designed to hit bonus targets." "That's your interpretation," Moss said, his voice tight. "There are legitimate reasons why projections might not match actuals." "There are, but not in a pattern this consistent." Lily clicked again. "And then I found this." Email on screen. From Moss to Chen. 3 years ago. "I need the Q3 numbers to look better. Make it happen." The room went very quiet. That email was sent 2 weeks before Chen submitted the Q3 projections that were inflated by 7%, Lily said. "And it was sent from your official company email, Mr. Moss. No encryption, no privacy settings, just a clear instruction to manipulate the numbers." Moss stood. "That email is being taken completely out of context." "Then provide the context," Lily said. "Tell us what you meant by make it happen." "I meant make sure the projections were accurate, that they reflected realistic growth targets. Based on what data? Because the actual performance that quarter was nowhere near Chen's projections. So either you asked him to project accurately and he ignored you, which means you failed to supervise him, or you asked him to make the numbers look better regardless of accuracy, which means you directed him to commit fraud." The gray-suited board member spoke up. "Mr. Moss, is there documentation of your supervision after this email? Any follow-up asking Chen to verify his projections or explain his methodology?" Moss sat down slowly. "I trusted my team to do their jobs." "That's not an answer," the man said. "I trusted them," Moss repeated, but his voice had lost its certainty. Lily clicked to the next slide. Marcus's testimony. "Yesterday I was approached by Marcus Chen, David's brother. Marcus worked in David's department and helped him alter the projections. He's provided testimony and evidence documenting the fraud. He's also provided this." Another email. This one from David to Marcus. Moss wants better numbers for the board presentation. You know what to do. Delete this after. Marcus didn't delete it, Lily said quietly. He kept it for 3 years, hoping someone would eventually care enough to investigate. Jennifer Park cared. She was fired. I care, and I'm not going to stop until everyone responsible is held accountable. She looked around the table. This isn't about interpretation or judgment calls. This is about fraud. Systematic, documented, enabled by an executive who was supposed to prevent it. And when an employee tried to expose it, she was silenced, and the person she reported got promoted. The board members were talking among themselves now. Moss sat very still, his face pale. The woman board member stood. I move that Richard Moss be suspended pending a full investigation by an independent firm. All authority transferred to interim CFO immediately. Second, said the gray-suited man. All in favor? Ethan asked. 10 hands went up. Only 2 abstained. Both were Moss's longtime friends. Motion carries. Ethan looked at Moss. Richard, I'm sorry, but you're suspended effective immediately. Legal will be in touch regarding next steps. Moss stood slowly, gathering his things. When he reached the door, he turned back to Lily. You just destroyed a 20-year career based on speculation and the testimony of someone who admitted to committing crimes. No, Lily said. You destroyed your career when you told David Chen to make the numbers look better and then covered for him when he did. I just documented it. After Moss left, the board continued for another hour, discussing next steps, investigation protocols, damage control. Lily answered their questions mechanically, her mind still processing what had just happened. She'd done it. Taken down a CFO. Exposed fraud that had been hidden for years. Proven that the system could work if someone was willing to push hard enough. But she'd also made enemies. Powerful ones. Moss had friends on the board, in the executive ranks throughout the company. They would come for her eventually. When the meeting finally ended, Lily walked out of the boardroom and found a bathroom. She locked herself in the stall and let herself shake for exactly 2 minutes. Then she washed her face, fixed her hair, and went back to work. Ethan found her an hour later, still at her desk, reviewing the next case file. You should go home, he said. I'm fine. You just took down the CFO. You're allowed to take a breath. I'll breathe when I'm done with the other 16 cases. Ethan walked into her office and closed the door. Lily, you won. Take the win. It's not about winning. It's about making sure this doesn't happen again. She looked up at him. Jennifer Park spent 4 years carrying around evidence that nobody would look at. How many other Jennifers are out there? How many people gave up because they thought nobody cared? You cared. You proved that. I got lucky. I had you backing me. Most people don't have that. She set down her pen. That's what I'm trying to fix. Not just punishing the people who did wrong, building something that protects the people who try to do right. Ethan sat down across from her. You know the board is going to push back on some of your other cases. Moss was clear-cut. The others might not be. Then I'll make them clear-cut. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Lily's voice rose. Either we hold people accountable or we don't. Either we protect employees who speak up or we sacrifice them to protect executives. There's no middle ground. There's always middle ground. That's how organizations work. Compromise, negotiation. Is that what you want? For me to compromise? To negotiate away accountability because it's messy and uncomfortable? Lily stood. Because if that's what you want, you hired the wrong person. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood as well. You're right. I did hire you to not compromise, to push back, to be exactly this stubborn and righteous and unwilling to let things go. He walked to the door, then paused. But I also hired you to be smart. And going after all 16 cases at once isn't smart. It's exhausting yourself and everyone around you. Pick your battles, Lily. Win the ones that matter most. After he left, Lily sat alone in her office and tried to figure out which battles mattered most. They all mattered. Every single employee who'd been ignored or retaliated against or silenced. Every person who'd tried to do the right thing and gotten destroyed for it. But Ethan was right about one thing. She couldn't fight all of them at once. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer Park. I heard what happened in the board meeting. Thank you for believing me when nobody else did. Lily stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "You did the hard part. You reported it even when you knew it would cost you. I just finished what you started. Still, thank you." Lily set down her phone and looked at the stack of files on her desk. 16 more battles, 16 more people waiting for someone to care. She picked up the next file and got back to work. 3 weeks later, Lily's apartment heater finally worked. The landlord had fixed it without explanation, without her threatening legal action again, without the usual runaround. She'd come home to find a work order taped to her door in warmth for the first time since November. She knew exactly who was responsible. It was past 8 when she texted Ethan. "You fixed my heater." The reply came quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan, "Your landlord suddenly developed a conscience. These things happen. You paid him off. I made a persuasive argument about tenant rights and building codes." Very persuasive. Lily smiled despite herself, sitting on her couch in the warmth she'd stopped believing would come. Her laptop was open, another case file spread across the coffee table. The 10th one she'd reopened. 7 more to go after this. The scholarship fund had been restored 2 weeks ago. Press release went out yesterday. Formal apology to every student who'd been rejected under the altered criteria. 53 kids were getting letters this week telling them they'd been approved retroactively. Funding available immediately. Lily had read every single application. First-generation college students. Kids from neighborhoods like hers. Kids whose essays talked about working night shifts to help with rent. About parents who cleaned offices or drove buses or did the invisible work that kept everything running. Kids who deserved a chance. Jennifer Park had been rehired. Different department, same salary as she would have had if she'd never been forced out. David Chen was gone, facing criminal charges. Marcus Chen had resigned but agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. The independent investigation into Moss was ongoing, but the preliminary findings were damning enough that his permanent termination was all but certain. 7 executives had been suspended pending investigation. 4 had resigned. The head of HR was gone. 3 board members who'd been complicit in the expense reimbursement scheme had stepped down. And Lily was exhausted in a way that went deeper than just lost sleep. Her phone rang. "Ethan, you're still working," he said without preamble. "How do you know?" "Because it's 8:30 on a Friday and I know you." A pause. "I'm downstairs." Lily walked to her window and looked down. Black sedan idling at the curb. She could see Ethan in the back seat, phone to his ear, looking up at her building. "What are you doing here?" "Taking you to dinner. Real dinner, not the noodle shop. You've earned it." "I'm not dressed for—" "You're wearing jeans and a sweater, same as last time. Come down before I come up." Lily grabbed her coat. The restaurant was small, tucked into a side street she'd never noticed. White tablecloths, dim lighting, the kind of quiet that came from good soundproofing and customers who could afford discretion. "This is too much," Lily said as they were seated. "This is overdue." Ethan ordered wine without looking at the menu, then turned his attention to her. "When's the last time you took a day off?" "I took Sunday off." "You worked from home on Sunday. Carol told me you sent her 6 emails." "That's not working. That's just working." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Lily, you've accomplished more in 3 weeks than most people do in 3 years. You've exposed fraud, fired executives, rebuilt an entire ethics infrastructure. You're allowed to rest." "I'll rest when I'm done with the other 7 cases." "And then what? You find 7 more? Then 7 more after that?" His voice was gentle but firm. "There's always going to be another case, another problem, another fight. If you don't pace yourself, you're going to burn out." Lily knew he was right. She'd been feeling it the past few days. The exhaustion that coffee couldn't fix, the irritability that came from running on fumes, the way her hands shook sometimes when she was alone. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted quietly. "I'm not asking you to stop. I'm asking you to breathe." Ethan poured wine for both of them. "You've proven your point. The board knows you're serious. The executives know you won't back down. You've built credibility. Now you need to maintain it, and you can't do that if you collapse from exhaustion." The wine was good, too good. The kind of thing Lily had only tasted at wedding receptions where she wasn't really invited, just helping set up. "The board's still pushing back on some of the cases," she said. "The harassment complaint from the administrative assistant. They're saying it's he said, she said, That without concrete evidence, then you find concrete evidence or you document why none exists and present that. Ethan set down his glass. But you don't have to do it tonight or this weekend. Some fights take time. Time means she's still working in the same building as the man who harassed her. Time means she has to see him every day and pretend everything's fine. I know, but you pushing yourself to the breaking point doesn't help her. It just means when you do break, nobody's left to fight for her at all. The food came. Lily hadn't even looked at the menu, but Ethan had ordered for both of them and somehow gotten it exactly right. She was halfway through her plate before she realized she'd been actually hungry, not just eating because she should. "How's Emma?" she asked, changing the subject. Ethan's expression softened immediately. "She's good. Asked about you, actually." "About me?" I told her I had a friend who was very brave, who stood up for people even when it was hard. She wanted to know if you were a superhero. He smiled. I said, kind of. I'm not a superhero. You fired my CFO. That's pretty super to a 5-year-old. He paused. She wants to meet you. Lily nearly choked on her wine. What? Emma. She wants to meet the brave friend. Ethan's tone was careful, like he was testing the waters. Obviously no pressure. I know that's weird, my kid wanting to meet my... He stopped, seemingly unsure how to finish that sentence. Your what? Lily asked. Ethan met her eyes. I don't know yet. Employee feels wrong, friend feels incomplete. Something else feels presumptuous. Presumptuous how? We're having dinner, again. I fixed your heater. I think about you more than I probably should, considering I'm technically your boss. He set down his fork. And I still don't know if you're here because you want to be or because you feel like you owe me something. Lily was quiet for a long moment. That was the question, wasn't it? The one she'd been avoiding since that first dinner at the noodle shop. You lied to me, she said finally. For 2 months, you let me think you were someone else. And I know you had your reasons. I know you were trying to understand the company, trying to find people who weren't performing for you, but it still hurt. I know. Because I told you things. About my life, about my fears, about how hard it was to trust systems that were designed to protect people like you and punish people like me. And you listened like you understood, but you didn't understand, not really, because you own the system. Ethan didn't argue, just listened. But then you backed me, Lily continued, when I sent that email, when I testified against Vanessa, when I went after Moss. You could have pulled back, could have decided I was too much trouble, and you didn't, because you were right. No, because you chose to believe I was right. There's a difference. She took a breath. So I don't know what we are either, but I'm not here because I owe you. I'm here because when you're not being the CEO, when you're just being Ethan, I actually like you. And when I am being the CEO, you're exhausting. She smiled slightly, but in a way that makes me want to be better at what I do, so I can keep up. Ethan laughed, actually laughed, not the careful corporate version. I'll take that. They finished dinner slowly, conversation drifting to safer topics, books they'd read, places they'd never traveled but wanted to. Emma's current obsession with dinosaurs and how Ethan had learned more about the Cretaceous period in the past month than he'd ever wanted to know. By the time dessert came, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relaxed, present, not thinking 3 steps ahead to the next case or the next fight. Thank you for this, she said quietly. For overpriced food? For reminding me that there's more to life than work. Says the woman who sent Carol 6 emails on Sunday. I'm working on it. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and set it down. Problem? Lily asked. The independent investigator found something in Moss's files. They're asking if they should proceed or wait for board approval. He picked up the phone again, typed a quick response, set it back down. They can proceed. What did they find? I don't know yet, but it's significant enough that legal flagged it immediately. He looked at her. This might get worse before it gets better. It usually does. Are you ready for that? Lily thought about Jennifer Park, about the 53 scholarship students, about the administrative assistants still waiting for justice, about all the people who'd been silenced and were finally being heard. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. The call came at 6 a.m. on Monday. Carol's voice tense and urgent. Miss Bennett, you need to come in, now. The investigators found something in Moss's files, and Mr. Cole wants you here before the board meeting at 8. Lily was dressed and out the door in 15 minutes. The morning was cold, the kind of November wind that cut through layers, but she barely noticed. Ethan met her at the elevator, Carol trailing behind with a tablet and a stack of folders. What did they find? Lily asked. A second set of books. Ethan's voice was tight. Moss had been running a shadow accounting system for 3 years. Every altered projection Chen made, Moss documented the real numbers separately. He knew exactly how much fraud was happening because he was tracking it. Why would he track it if he was complicit? Because he was planning to blame Chen if it ever came out. The shadow books show every discrepancy, every altered projection, with notes indicating Chen made the changes. Moss was building a paper trail that made him look like he'd discovered the fraud, not enabled it. Lily's stomach turned. That's calculated, premeditated, and completely damning. Ethan pushed open the conference room door. The investigators are presenting to the board in an hour. I wanted you to see this first. The evidence was spread across the table. Spreadsheets, emails, handwritten notes, all of it in Moss's writing, all of it documenting fraud he claimed to have just discovered. But the dates told a different story. He started the shadow books 3 years ago, the lead investigator explained. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who'd probably seen everything. Right after that email to Chen about making the numbers look better, he knew Chen was going to commit fraud because he'd asked him to, and he immediately started documenting it in a way that protected himself. Did Chen know about the shadow books? Lily asked. No evidence suggests he did. Moss kept them on a private server, encrypted, accessible only to him. The investigator pulled up another file. But here's where it gets interesting. Moss also documented other executives doing similar things. Vanessa's scholarship fund changes. Several VPs inflating performance metrics. The head of HR burying harassment complaints. All of it tracked, all of it noted, all of it kept as insurance. He was collecting leverage, Ethan said quietly, making sure that if anyone came after him, he could bring down half the executive team with him. Exactly. He's been running his own internal blackmail operation for 3 years. The investigator looked at Lily. Including documentation of your original audit 3 years ago, the one where you flagged the vendor contract and got overruled. Lily's hands went cold. What? Moss kept a copy of your report, with notes indicating you'd identified fraud correctly and had been silenced by your supervisor. He never did anything with it. Just kept it as evidence that the ethics process was broken, probably to use if he ever needed to deflect blame elsewhere. He knew, Lily whispered. For 3 years, he knew I'd found fraud, and he did nothing. He did worse than nothing, the investigator corrected. He documented it and kept it secret so he could use it later. You, Jennifer Park, every other person who reported problems, you were all just potential ammunition for him. Lily sat down heavily. All those nights in Section D, reading reports nobody else bothered to read, filing objections that went nowhere. Thinking she was failing because she wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't valuable enough to be heard. And Moss had known the entire time that she was right. He just hadn't cared. This changes everything, Ethan said. Moss wasn't just covering up fraud, he was orchestrating a system where fraud was documented but never addressed, where whistleblowers were tracked but never protected, where the entire ethics infrastructure existed solely to protect him and the people he could use as leverage. What do you want to do? The investigator asked. Ethan looked at Lily. What do you think? I think we take all of this to the board, every piece of evidence, every name in his files, and we clean house, not just Moss, everyone he documented, everyone who knew and did nothing. That's half the executive team, Ethan said quietly. Then we rebuild with people who actually care about doing the right thing. Lily stood. You asked me to build an ethics infrastructure that protects employees. I can't do that while the people who created the broken system are still here. The board meeting lasted 4 hours. The investigator presented her findings. Lily presented the connections between Moss's shadow books and the cases she'd been investigating. Ethan presented a restructuring plan that would eliminate 7 executive positions and redistribute their authority. The board members were silent through most of it, shocked, angry, some of them clearly calculating their own exposure. When the investigator finished, the woman board member who'd supported Lily from the beginning stood. "I move that we accept Mr. Cole's restructuring plan in full, that we terminate every executive documented in Mr. Moss's files as having committed or enabled misconduct, that we issue a formal public apology for the failures of our ethics process, and that we grant Miss Bennett full authority to rebuild that process from the ground up, with board oversight but operational independence." "Second," said the gray-suited man. The vote was unanimous. By noon, 12 executives had been terminated. By the end of the week, Lily had hired an external ethics firm to help rebuild the complaint process, implemented anonymous reporting systems, and established an independent review board that included employee representatives. The company bled talent. Some good people left because they didn't want to work somewhere that had been so corrupt. Some bad people left before they could be investigated. The stock price dropped. Investors demanded explanations. But something else happened too. Applications started coming in from people who'd left years ago, people who'd tried to speak up and been silenced. They wanted to come back because they'd heard things were different now, that there was someone who actually listened. Lily interviewed them all personally, apologized to the ones who'd been wronged, hired back the ones who wanted to return, built a team of people who'd survived the broken system and wanted to make sure nobody else had to. 6 weeks after the board meeting, the company held an all-hands gathering. Ethan stood at the front and did something Lily had never seen a CEO do. He apologized. Not a carefully worded corporate statement, an actual apology. "We failed you," he said, looking out at hundreds of employees. "For years, we built systems that protected executives instead of people. That rewarded silence instead of truth. That made it dangerous to care about doing the right thing. And people got hurt. People lost their jobs, their careers, their faith that this company could be anything other than what it had become." He paused, looking directly at Lily, who stood at the side of the stage. But one person refused to accept that, refused to stay silent when she found fraud, refused to recant when pressured, refused to give up even when it cost her everything. And because she refused, we're standing here today with a chance to be better, to actually mean it when we say we value integrity and accountability. The applause started slowly, then built. Lily felt her face heat as people turned to look at her. This wasn't what she wanted. She didn't need recognition or praise. But when she saw Jennifer Parks standing in the crowd, tears streaming down her face, applauding like her hands hurt. When she saw the administrative assistant who'd filed the harassment complaint, smiling for the first time since Lily had met her, when she saw all the people who'd been silenced and were finally being seen, that mattered. After the gathering, Lily found herself alone in her new office. Not the storage closet on the 19th floor. An actual office on the 21st floor with a window, a door that locked, and a nameplate that read Director of Ethics and Compliance Oversight. Someone knocked. Ethan, holding 2 coffee cups. "Thought you might need this," he said. "I'm swimming in coffee. People keep bringing me coffee." "Then I'll drink both." He came in and closed the door. "You did good today. Hell, you've done good every day. You know that, right?" "I didn't do it alone." "No, but you started it. That matters." He set down the coffee cups. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not seeing how broken things were until you forced me to look. For creating a culture where someone like Moss could operate for years without anyone stopping him. For all the Jennifer Parks and Marcus Chens who suffered because I wasn't paying attention." Lily studied him. This man who'd mopped floors to understand his own company, who'd risked his reputation to back her, who was trying, imperfectly, to be better than the system he'd inherited. "You're paying attention now," she said quietly. "That's what matters." "Is it enough?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a year." Ethan smiled. "Fair enough." He picked up one of the coffee cups. "Emma wants to know if you're coming to her birthday party next month." "She doesn't even know me." "She knows you're the brave friend who helped her dad do something good. That's enough for her." He paused. "It's enough for me too, if you want to come." Lily thought about it. A 5-year-old's birthday party, probably dinosaur-themed, definitely chaotic, completely outside her comfort zone. "Okay," she said. "I'll come." "Yeah?" "Yeah, but I'm not wearing a dinosaur costume. Emma will be disappointed, but I'll manage her expectations." After he left, Lily sat at her desk and looked out the window. The city stretched below, thousands of buildings full of thousands of people living thousands of lives she'd never know. But she knew some of them now, the ones who'd been hurt and were healing, the ones who'd spoken up and been heard, the ones who'd tried to do the right thing and finally had someone backing them. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer Park. Drinks this weekend? My treat. I owe you about 1,000 drinks, but we can start with one. Lily smiled and typed back. You don't owe me anything, but I'll take the drink anyway. Another text came through. Marcus Chen, started therapy. Thought you should know. Also got a job offer from a competitor. They heard what I did and said they need people willing to stand up. Thank you for that. Then one from the administrative assistant whose harassment case Lily had reopened. He got fired today. Official termination for cause. HR called me personally to apologize. I didn't think this would ever happen. Thank you. Lily set down her phone and let herself feel it. Not pride, exactly. More like relief. The bone-deep relief of knowing that the thing she'd risked everything for had actually mattered. Her computer dinged. Email from the Scholarship Fund Coordinator. Subject: Spring Semester. Disbursements. Miss Bennett, I wanted to let you know that we've processed all 53 retroactive approvals. Every student has been notified and funding is being distributed this week. Additionally, we've received 147 new applications for spring semester under the restored criteria. Early review suggests approximately 89 will qualify. For the first time in 3 years, we're actually fulfilling our mission. Thank you for making that possible. Lily read the email 3 times. 89 kids. 89 first-generation college students who would get a chance because someone had cared enough to fight for them. She thought about her mother, about working 3 jobs and still not affording the prescriptions, about telling Lily to be smart, be safe, but also don't let them make you small. I didn't let them, Mom, she whispered to the empty office. I didn't let them make me small. That night, Lily went home to her warm apartment and didn't open her laptop, didn't review case files, didn't draft reports or prepare for meetings. She ordered takeout from the noodle shop on 5th Street, ate it on her couch, and watched a movie that had nothing to do with ethics or fraud or corporate accountability. And for the first time in months, she slept through the night. Saturday morning, Lily woke up to find her phone full of texts, most of them from employees thanking her, a few from executives who'd survived the purge, asking for meetings to discuss how to rebuild their departments. One from Carol asking if Lily wanted to join her book club, and one from Ethan, sent at midnight. I know you're not working this weekend. You'd better not be working this weekend. But I wanted to tell you something. My father used to say that a company's character isn't defined by what it does when everyone's watching. It's defined by what it does when nobody would know the difference. You made sure we couldn't ignore the difference anymore. He would have liked you. I like you. Just thought you should know. Lily read it twice. Then she typed, I like you too, even when you're being the exhausting CEO version. Especially then, don't push your luck. She met Jennifer for drinks that evening at a bar neither of them could have afforded 6 months ago. They didn't talk about work. They talked about Jennifer's kids, about Lily's slowly improving apartment situation, about normal things that had nothing to do with fraud or investigations. Can I ask you something? Jennifer said after her second glass of wine. Sure. How did you do it? Stay brave when everyone was telling you to back down? Lily thought about that, about the email sent at 1:17 in the morning, about standing in Vanessa's office refusing to recant, about going after Moss even when the board was pushing back. I don't think I was brave, she said finally. I think I was just tired of being scared. And at some point, being scared of speaking up became scarier than whatever they'd do to me if I did. That's literally the definition of brave. Maybe. Or maybe I just got stubborn, Lily smiled. My mom used to say I was the most stubborn kid she'd ever met, drove her crazy, but she also said it was the thing that would save me someday. She was right. Yeah, she usually was. They stayed until closing, talking and laughing and being 2 women who'd survived something hard and come out the other side still standing. When Lily finally got home, she felt lighter than she had in years. Monday morning brought new cases, a whistleblower from the warehouse reporting safety violations, an analyst who'd found accounting irregularities, a manager who'd witnessed discrimination. But this time, Lily had a team. The external ethics firm she'd hired, the employee review board, the new HR director who actually cared about protecting people instead of protecting the company from people. She wasn't alone anymore. 2 weeks later, Lily found herself standing outside a house in the suburbs, holding a wrapped present and feeling ridiculously out of place. The house was big, but not ostentatious. Nice neighborhood. Cars in driveways, kids on bikes. Ethan opened the door before she could knock. "You came," he said, smiling. "I said I would." "I know. I just wasn't sure you wouldn't get pulled into a case and cancel." "I almost did, but Carol threatened to physically drag me here, so." Emma appeared behind Ethan, wearing a dinosaur costume and a huge grin. "Are you the brave friend?" she demanded. Lily knelt down to her level. "I'm Lily, your dad's friend." "Are you brave?" "Sometimes, when I have to be." Emma studied her seriously. "Daddy says you helped him do something good, that you told the truth even when people said not to." "Yeah, I did." "That's very brave." Emma grabbed Lily's hand. "Come see my dinosaurs. I have 17. Lily let herself be dragged into the house, past other parents and kids, into a living room decorated with streamers and balloons, and a cake shaped like a T-Rex. Ethan followed, looking amused. 17 dinosaurs? Lily asked him. It was a phase that became a lifestyle. I've accepted it. Emma showed Lily every single dinosaur, explaining their names and periods and diets with the kind of enthusiasm only a 5-year-old could muster. Other kids joined in, and soon Lily was sitting on the floor surrounded by children, learning more about the Mesozoic era than she'd ever imagined needing to know. At some point, Ethan's ex-wife arrived to pick up Emma. She was polite, professional, clearly co-parenting more than coexisting. She shook Lily's hand and thanked her for coming. And there was no weirdness, no tension, just two adults who'd decided they were better apart than together, making it work for their kid. When most of the guests had left and Emma was showing signs of sugar crash, Ethan walked Lily to her car. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It meant a lot, to Emma and to me." "It was good? Weird, but good." Lily leaned against her car. "I've never been to a kid's birthday party before. Never had siblings, never babysat. It was nice. Emma likes you. She asked if you could come to all her birthdays from now on." "That's a long commitment." "Yeah, but I'm hoping you'll be around that long anyway." Ethan stepped closer. "Not just for birthdays. For everything." Lily's heart did something complicated. "Ethan, I know. I'm your boss. It's complicated. There are HR policies and power dynamics and 1,000 reasons this is a bad idea." He met her eyes. "But I like you. Not the director of ethics version. Not the woman who took down my CFO. Just you. The person who feeds janitors and fights for scholarship kids and refuses to compromise on what matters." "I like you too," Lily admitted. "But I have no idea how this works, how we navigate the fact that you literally own the company I work for." "Neither do I. But I'm willing to figure it out if you are." He paused. "No pressure. If you'd rather keep things professional, I understand. Your job is secure either way. I'm not that kind of boss." Lily thought about it, about all the ways this could go wrong, about what people would say, about the complications and the conflicts, and the very real chance that mixing personal and professional would blow up in both their faces. Then she thought about Ethan listening to her complaints about management when he was the top of management, about him backing her against Moss even when it cost him allies, about him sitting on the floor at his daughter's birthday party, explaining the difference between herbivores and carnivores with the same seriousness he brought to board meetings. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Let's figure it out, slowly, carefully, with a lot of conversations about boundaries and conflicts of interest." She smiled. "But yeah, let's try." Ethan smiled back, and it was the real smile. Not the CEO's smile, not the careful corporate mask, just Ethan, happy and hopeful and maybe a little scared, which made Lily feel better about being scared too. "Dinner next week?" he asked. "Not the fancy place, the noodle shop?" "Deal." Lily drove home through the city she'd lived in for 8 years but was only now starting to feel like hers, past the building where she'd sent that email at 1:17 in the morning, past the bus stop where she'd waited countless mornings, past all the places that had been part of surviving that were now becoming part of living. Her phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Ethan. Emma wants me to tell you that velociraptors were actually the size of chickens and the movies got it wrong. She feels this is important information you should have. Lily laughed and typed back, "Tell her thank you. That changes everything." She also wants to know if you like chocolate or vanilla cake because her next birthday is already being planned. Chocolate? Obviously. Good answer. She approves of you. The light turned green. Lily drove the rest of the way home, smiling. 3 months later, the company held its quarterly town hall. Ethan stood at the front and announced the results of the ethics overhaul. 23 cases investigated, 17 resolved with corrective action. 6 employees reinstated who'd been wrongfully terminated. The harassment complaint that had been he said, she said was now resolved with clear findings and consequences. The scholarship fund had distributed funding to 142 students in the spring semester. Applications for fall were already coming in, and the anonymous ethics reporting system had received 47 submissions in its first month. People were starting to believe that reporting problems wouldn't destroy them. Lily sat in the audience and listened to Ethan talk about culture change and accountability, watched employees actually engage instead of sitting silent and resentful, saw people starting to believe the system might actually work. After the town hall, she went back to her office and found a package on her desk. No return address, just her name. Inside was a framed photo. The old scholarship fund charter, the original one, before Vanessa had changed it. And attached to the frame was a note in Ethan's handwriting, so you never forget what you were fighting for. E. Lily hung it on her wall, right where she could see it every day. 6 months after that, Lily got a text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Sarah Mitchell. You don't know me, but I read about what happened at your company. I work in finance and I found something wrong. My boss told me to ignore it. I don't know what to do." Lily stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed, "Don't ignore it. Document everything. And send me what you found. I'll help you figure out the next steps." Really? You'd help me? Someone helped me when I needed it. I'm just paying it forward. The documentation came through an hour later. Lily reviewed it, recognized the patterns, and made some calls. By end of week, Sarah had connected with a lawyer. By end of month, she'd filed a formal complaint with her company's board. Lily never met Sarah in person, but she got a text 3 months later. They investigated. Found everything I reported. My boss got fired. They offered me his job. I don't know if I should take it. Lily smiled and typed back, "Take it. Then build something better than what was there before." That's how we change things. One person at a time. 1 year after sending that email at 1:17 in the morning, Lily sat in her office and looked at the wall of framed articles. Coverage of the scholarship fund restoration, the ethics overhaul, the executives who'd been held accountable. But her favorite wasn't an article. It was a letter from one of the scholarship recipients, a first-generation college student from a neighborhood like Lily had grown up in. "Dear Miss Bennett, I don't know if you'll remember my application. There were so many of you reviewed, but I wanted to thank you for fighting for this scholarship. My mom works 2 jobs and my dad's disability doesn't cover much. Without this funding, I wouldn't be able to go to college. I'd be working full-time trying to save enough money I'd never actually save. My guidance counselor told me not to bother applying. She said kids like me don't get scholarships like this, that it's for people with connections and perfect grades and parents who can afford SAT tutors. But I applied anyway. And I got in, because you made them remember who they were supposed to help. I'm going to study engineering. I'm going to build things. And someday when I have the chance to help someone else the way you helped me, I'm going to remember that it matters. That one person refusing to stay quiet can change everything. Thank you for being that person." Lily read it every time she doubted whether any of this mattered, every time she got tired of fighting, every time she wanted to just sign off and stop caring. That evening, she met Ethan at the noodle shop, their spot now, the corner table where they'd had that first real dinner. "How was your day?" he asked, already knowing the answer because Carol kept him updated on the major cases. "Long, good, exhausting." Lily accepted the tea he poured. "Closed the warehouse safety case. Full corrective action, new protocols. The supervisor who ignored the violations is gone." That's the 18th case you've resolved. 19. The discrimination case settled yesterday. She took a sip of tea. But there are always more. Always. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. Something they did now, something that had stopped feeling weird about 3 months ago when they'd finally navigated the HR policies and conflict of interest disclosures and made it official. Emma asked if you're coming to dinner Sunday, he said. What's the theme this week? Space. She's moved on from dinosaurs to astronauts. That's an improvement. Wait until she explains orbital mechanics. It's actually impressive how much she's retained. Lily laughed. She'd been having Sunday dinners with them for 4 months now. It had started as once a month, then every other week, and now it was just expected. Emma had her own chair. Ethan cooked, badly, but with enthusiasm. And they'd sit around the table like something resembling a family. It still felt strange. Good strange. The kind of strange Lily was getting used to. I'll be there, she said. They finished dinner and walked back to Lily's apartment together. Her heater worked. The landlord had fixed the lock. The building was still shabby, but it was hers, and it was warm, and that mattered. At her door, Ethan kissed her goodnight. Not the first kiss, not even the 20th, but still the kind that made her feel like maybe she'd done something right along the way. I'm proud of you, he said quietly, for everything you've built. We built it. You backed me when nobody else would. You started it. That's the hard part. He touched her face gently. The world needs more people willing to start things, even when it's terrifying. After he left, Lily sat on her couch and thought about that email at 1:17 in the morning, about the scholarship students and Jennifer Park and all the people who'd been waiting for someone to care. She thought about her mother saying, "Don't let them make you small." And she thought about Emma asking, "Did you do something good today, Daddy?" And how that question had changed everything. Lily's phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. Coffee tomorrow? I have someone I want you to meet. She's thinking about reporting harassment at her company and she's scared. I told her you'd talk to her. Lily typed back without hesitation. Of course. 9 a.m.? Perfect. Thank you. Lily set down her phone and looked around her apartment. At the warm radiator and the fixed lock and the framed photo of her mother on the shelf. At the laptop that held case files and evidence and the work that never really ended. At the life she'd built from the wreckage of that firing. From the choice to tell the truth even when it cost everything. She thought about the person she'd been a year ago. Invisible. Careful. Making herself small so she could survive. And she thought about who she was now. Still scared sometimes. Still exhausted often. But no longer invisible. No longer silent. No longer willing to let the system win just because fighting it was hard. Lily stood and walked to her window. The city stretched out below, full of people fighting their own battles. Some would win, some would lose, some would never fight at all because they didn't believe they could. But maybe one of them would. Maybe one person would read about what happened at her company, would see that speaking up didn't have to end in destruction, would find the courage to send their own email at 1:17 in the morning. And maybe that would start something, a ripple, a change. One person refusing to stay silent, then another, until the system couldn't ignore them anymore. Lily's phone buzzed one more time. Text from Ethan. Made it home. Emma says goodnight and also wants to know if you believe in aliens. Apparently this is urgent. Lily smiled and typed, Tell her I believe in possibilities. That's close enough. She set her phone down and got ready for bed. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new fights, new people needing someone to believe them. But tonight, she was just Lily, not the director of ethics, not the whistleblower who took down executives, just a woman who'd chosen to be brave when it mattered and was learning how to live with what came after. She climbed into bed in her warm apartment and thought about the scholarship student's letter, about being the person who refused to stay quiet, about changing everything one choice at a time. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lily fell asleep believing she'd done something good today. Not perfect, not finished, but good enough to matter.